Oh, God.
The face of a sunflower?
Spirals. Oh.
You see this meth everywhere.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true Gnosis. What if I changed it up to like a game show? What are you about to attain? And the crowd goes, true Gnosis.
Oh, God.
Wait, where's my applause? I don't have applause anymore. I must have got rid of it.
So, what if I had talked like this and said, this is an important message from the government of the solar system crashing down on you right now, taking over Gnostic Informant's live stream. What would you say about that, huh? What would you say?
Or what would you say if I told you that I am Satan himself? I have taken over Gnostic Informant's show. I've taken over his body, and I've taken over his soul, and I'm coming for all your throats. Then what would you say about that?
Huh?
Oh, God.
What would you say about that? Anyways, I wanted to just come on and do a live stream tonight. Talk, do some super chats, talk to the chat, get some Gnosis, talk about what's coming up, projects, all that stuff. I have a series of debates coming up right now. So just give me 1 second. Let me just close this door. So I have a series of debates coming up that are going to be interesting for everybody. The first one that's coming up is going to be a debate. Actually, I can pull this one up and show you where the link is, but I'm going to stream it here too. But Jim Bob, made by Jim Bob, wants to host it. Here's the debate right here. Let me share my screen. This one right here. My debate prompt is Muslims worship the same exact God as Christians and Jews. It's all the same God. I think this will be the easiest debate I've ever done in my entire life, because that statement is as objectively true as snow is white, or this keyboard's made out of plastic.
Moonbeam Benjamin dropped $1.99 super chat. Who would win in a battle, Krishna or Apollo?
That's like asking a question between, DC or Marvel. I mean, there's like two different metaphysical realities going. I mean, I don't know. Apollo. I mean, I would. Apollo is like a warrior destroyer. It would be better. I think it'd be better to watch Apollo versus Shiva destroyer versus the destroyer. Apollo does destroy. And that's the first thing he does in Homer's Iliad. He just is invoked and asked to get revenge on people. And he's a warrior god as much as he's a healer god. So his name, Apollyon, means to destroy, but he's also the god of healing and salvation and purity and aristocracy and those type of things. Beauty, form, music, that type of thing. But that's the word. Literally, the word Apollyon means to destroy, destroyer, which is a very, very fascinating etymology of a god with that nature. So you got to watch out for Apollo. He will send a plague and destroy your whole shit. So I don't know. That's a good question. I would say Apollo, but Krishna is right up there.
At Snowstill dropped $5 super chat. The Lion Man of Hohenstein Stadel would kick all their butts.
Nice. Yes, the Lion Man. Let's pull that up. Lion Man from Germany. Let's see. He's talking about this guy right here. One of my favorite archaeological discoveries of all time is this little guy. Discovered in a German cave, Hohenstein-Stadel. We're talking Stone Age, 40,000 years ago. It's made out of mammoth ivory of a mammoth that's obviously is extinct. So that's how we know. That's one of the reasons why we can date this thing. Fascinating artwork. It looks like a man with a lion head. It's definitely got some very, very distinct looking ears and mouth. And it's really fast. And look, we have the same brains as Stone Age Homo sapiens. I don't think people realize that. I don't think people really register what that means. We have the same brains as Stone Age Homo sapiens. That means they're just as smart as us, just as capable as us.
At Grandpa.of.10 dropped $4.99 super chat. Good work.
Thank you, Grandpa of 10. And I hope you're having fun with those 10 grandchildren. That's something I'd be proud of too. I would definitely have that as my name too. If I was a Grandpa of 10. Appreciate you. That's awesome. Thank you for the $5. But yeah, these Stone Age people, don't underestimate them. People wonder, how did they build these structures? They must have had some technology. No, they were just really fucking smart, and they put their minds together, and they got shit done the same way we would do stuff today. I mean, we have better technology today, obviously, but that's because we've built our knowledge off of people who built their knowledge, off people who built their knowledge, off people who built their knowledge, going back to them. So they're the roots of all the things that we take credit for. We were born into a society, all of us were born into a society that already had knowledge bases. And we build off those knowledge bases, and then we leave more knowledge bases for the people after us. That's how it works. Unless your civilization gets wiped out, unless, sometimes you have a dark age. They call it, this is why the dark age debate thrives on with early Middle Ages, because there were so many plagues and there were so many wars and catastrophes in that time period that there was somewhat of a decline. If you want to, people debate how much of a decline it was. Some people say there wasn't any decline. I think that's silly to say that. You know what I mean? But yeah, the Justinian plague was. It doesn't have to be about Christianity. If Christianity is the reason why the Dark Age, we can get into that. I think it's part of the reason. But this is an objectively true fact that there was this gigantic epidemic of plague that affected the entire Mediterranean basin and the Near East, Persian and Roman Empire, almost literally devastated by this. It's the bubonic plague. Disgusting. I don't want to look at that. Procopius first reports it in 554. And this affects the world, the Western world, for the next 3-4 centuries. Seriously. I wonder if I can find if there's a source in here that talks about that, because onset of the first plague. Look at this. The plague of Justinian is the first and best known outbreak, which continued to recur until the middle of the 8th century. What? That's multiple centuries. Imagine, like, COVID was nothing. COVID was a few years. Imagine, and then no, it wasn't killing everyone like this plague was. There were people dying, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? I'm not going to get into COVID right now. Thank you for joining, Mike. You have been initiated into
Mike
Gnosis.
PT4VH has become initiated.
The point I'm making is, this was deadly. It was way more deadly than anything we've ever experienced, and it lasted for hundreds of years. You know, that's from a few recent papers, actually. And then it says, some historians believe that the first plague pandemic was one of the deadliest pandemics in history, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 15 to 100 million people during 2 centuries of recurrence. What? A death toll equivalent to 25 to 60%. So on the low end, the estimates are 25, 1/4 of every single person in Europe gone, to 60%, over half of Europe gone over this period of time. That's in the first outbreak. That's in the 5th century. I'm sorry, 6th century. Yeah, 6th century. Research published in 2019 argued that the 200-year-long pandemic's death toll and social effects have been exaggerated, comparing it to a modern third plague pandemic, 1850s. Furthermore, some historians argue that eyewitness accounts of the disease are hysterical in tone and therefore, so, you know, there's always two sides to everything. There's always debates on these things. I've talked to people who said it was pretty bad. From there, people who study the medieval period think that it was really bad. And look, we can look at the results and kind of what's the word? Deduce. We can use deductive logic and trying to assess this, because where is all the great works of literature in this period? Again, I'm not even getting into Christianity. I'm not even blaming Christianity yet. But I mean, where is all the great artworks? Where's all the great? I mean, I'm not saying there's none. I know some people right now in the comments are going to point. What about this one from 800? Yeah, no, I'm not saying there's nothing. There's still obviously stuff being produced. You know, you have Arthur cycle, but there's not. If you sit there and made a list of all the classics, and I'm not. I can be unfair and go from the whole entire antiquity, and then and compare 1,000 years. This is what some people do. I know some people do this. This is unfair. They'll go from Homer to 500 AD, which is over 1,000 years of time. And then they'll go, look at all the great works from that period compared to the Dark Ages. Well, of course, it's going to mog the Dark Ages. But I would rather say this: pick any 300-year period, 300, 400-year period before this period. Pick anyone at random. 200 AD to 400 AD. You can do 800 BC to 400 BC or something. You know what I mean? And you're going to, they all mog this period as far, and I know this is a subjective thing. There's not a lot of good ways to measure how many classical works there are. I think we can come up with an objective way to measure. I just don't know if anyone's ever tried yet. Like we can do like texts that have been cited and expounded upon, and then like Homer, it has like thousands of citations and thousands of rewritten stories, and that can be like we can give it a score, right? We could find a way to do a Bayesian analysis on this, I think. And I think no matter what period you choose before the Dark Ages gets mogged every single time. So that's why I stand behind the idea that the term Dark Ages is legit. And then that brings up Christianity, the culture. I do think this has an effect on things. I do think there's a fault here. I do think Christianity is part of the reason for this period, for the art of this period, and we can point to their law codes. We can point to what they are passing as as you know, the law of the land, the policy, right? Justinian's policy, Theodosius's policy, various Byzantine emperors, or we can go to the West and look into Gothic policy and that stuff. And I think what it looks like, what's going on is they are enforcing policy that prevents people from performing playwrights, writing plays. The music industry is all relegated to the church, so you just get like hymns and Gregorian chants and all that stuff, and you're not getting and then you can read about music in the classical period and all the different modes of music, Phrygian mode, all the different Doric modes and all this stuff. There's a huge thriving music culture and art culture. And you even have famous, you know how in the Renaissance you have all these famous artists like Da Vinci and Michelangelo. That's how the classical period was. Praxiteles, for example. This is just one of many. There's a whole bunch of people like this who are famous artists. It was like the Renaissance in a way, where you don't have famous artists like this in the so-called Dark Ages or early Middle Ages. You don't have a Praxiteles, who everyone knew is a household name, like Da Vinci, like Michelangelo. The Renaissance was a thriving period, just like the classical period. And you had these famous artists, and you had these famous playwriters, you had these famous musicians, famous bards, famous poets. There was a thriving, colorful, three-dimensional culture that was going on. No one denies this. Christians themselves talk about this in their writings. And then back to Christians, what were they doing? Well, if you read like John Chrysostom, if you read his homilies, he's sitting there condemning plays. He's sitting there condemning stadiums and sports and gladiator fights and all this stuff that makes a culture a culture. This is all being condemned by Christianity. Their culture, they didn't even like images. People want to wipe this under the rug. Sweep this under the rug. Sorry for the slip there. They want to sweep this under the rug. This idea of iconoclasm, and then people talk about this as just an Islamic thing, Jewish thing. No, this is a Christian thing. The iconoclast movement was in the West, not as much. In the Latin West, they just started. They literally had statues of Mary and stuff, but not until later. For the most part, that all starts later. In the East, it's really bad. And this is where Islam adopts this idea from. I mean, we're talking high-ranking bishops that run cities that were saying no to images in churches. Saint Epiphanius himself, I wonder if he's actually in here. Epiphanius, yes, among early church theologians, then look, it says iconoclastic tendencies were supported. That's not true. It wasn't tendencies. They were straight up iconoclast. Epiphanius. There's a quote from Epiphanius in his Panarion where he says he goes to Jerusalem to visit a church, and they had an image of Jesus on the church. Just one image. I think he said it was on the door or something. And he knocked down the door and condemned the church for making images of God. This is against the 10 Commandments. This is Saint Epiphanius, dude. One of the most famous saints of the entire early church, sitting there telling you no images are allowed. Clement of Alexandria, another one, who says, if you're going to make images, just put them on like rings and stuff and just do like a fish. Don't make any images of Jesus, though. That's what he says. He's very, very clear on this. Justin Martyr, same thing. No images. And look, they have images of him in their Byzantine churches. He's literally telling you not to do this. It's so funny to me. They were anti-art. They were this is what Nietzsche gets into. They were anti-life, dude. That brings me to a passage that I really want to show you guys from Nietzsche. It's from the Antichrist. And I love this. I love the Antichrist, dude. It's so good. It's so good, dude. It's so good. Let me see. Let me share my screen. I'm going to read a little bit of this real quick. It is the one. It's in. Let's see. I just made a post about it. It's chapter. Let me see. Where did I put it? It's section 24. So it's written in 1924. He says, "Here I barely touch upon the problem of the origin of Christianity. The first thing necessary to its solution is this, that Christianity is to be understood only by examining the soil from which it sprung." Now, this is like the whole entire premise of my channel. If you really want to break down like what is Gnostic Conformance channel about, it's about the soil of Christianity's growth. So I'm talking about the pagan stuff, talking about the Jewish stuff, talking about the Zoroastrian, the I'm literally talking about this time period, this sort of first, mostly I stay in between like 500 BC and 500 AD, that 1,000-year period, which is a long time, I'm saying. But the epicenter of that period is this first century period, this Middle Platonist dominant part, the Stoic dominance century of the first century. And one of the big players culturally is Judaism. So a new religion, actually. It just sort of comes about in the Maccabean period. No one really knows much about it, but they know there's a lot of anti-traditional tendencies. Judaism is inherently anti-traditional when it comes to people in other cities or people in the surrounding cities of Judea practicing their ancestral customs. Even their own ancestral customs are thrown away and acted as if this was always been idolatry. This wasn't even, we were never supposed to do this stuff. Asherah poles, we were never supposed to do this stuff. It was always wrong, even though this is what their culture literally was. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about this. It's like a self-absorbing, self kind of hating thing going on in this culture. But here, this is what Nietzsche gets into. He says, it is not a reaction against Jewish instincts. It is their inevitable product. So, and I agree with this. So in the Maccabean period, there's these reforms, and the Jews decide we're going to conserve our people, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is our history, Moses, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, like, they have this like us against everyone else. And that is fine. Like, I don't care. I don't have a problem with anyone doing something like that and staying to themselves and sort of like breaking off into their own little thing. I don't even care. But what I care about is if there's an offshoot of that, a la Christianity, that does start to affect the world that my culture is in. You understand what I'm saying? So this is the root of it. And there's no denying that. There's no denying that. I'm not even talking about modern Israel. I'm talking about the first century right now. And this has nothing to do with today. So it is their inevitable product. It is simply one more step in the awe-inspiring logic of the Jews. In the words of the Savior, this is from John, Jesus literally says this, salvation is of the Jews. The second thing to remember is this, that the psychological type of the Galilean is still to be recognized, but it was only in the most degenerate form, which is at once maimed and overladen with foreign features, that it could still serve in the manner in which it has been used as a type of the Savior of mankind, of all mankind. John 4:22. The Jews are the most remarkable people in the history of the world. For when they were confronted with the question to be or not to be, I was just talking about this. This is Maccabean period stuff. They chose with perfectly unearthly deliberation to be at any price. This price involved a radical falsification of all nature, of all naturalness, of all reality. Literally, they rewrote reality itself. They rewrote their own history of a whole inner world. as well as the outer. You know, the whole entire history of the world is rewritten as this Adam thing and Noah thing. They put themselves against all those conditions under which hitherto a people had been able to live or had been permitted to live. Out of themselves, they evolved an idea which stood in direct opposition to natural conditions. One by one, they distorted religion, civilization, morality, history, and psychology until each became a contradiction of its natural significance. We meet with the same phenomenon later on in an incalculably exaggerated form, but only as a copy. The Christian church put beside the people of God, chosen people, shows a complete lack of any claim to originality. This is what Gnosis talks about, and Gnosis's critique of Christianity in the 2nd century. He kind of gets into this whole thing about their whole lack of originality, and they're just sort of like they're using the hardware and software of Judaism, but sort of just adding new code to the whole thing. Precisely for this reason, the Jews are the most faithful people in the history of the world. Their influence has so falsified the reasoning of mankind in this matter that today the Christian can cherish anti-Semitism without realizing that it is no more than the final consequence of Judaism. I could not agree more with that sentence. Today, the Christian can cherish anti-Semitism without realizing that it is no more than the final consequence of Judaism. I mean, all they're doing is they're looking at the text post hoc. They're looking at the whole entire corpus of literature of the Hebrew Bible, the Septuagint. That's what they're looking at, the Greek side. And they're post hoc rationalizing what happened. Well, there's a lot of talk in these texts and these prophets about backslidden, these Judeans that are backslidden and they're not following the laws of Moses and they couldn't keep the covenant. And so God had to destroy their temple again for the second time again. And because of that, he's not given over the reins to the Gentiles. And they cherry pick a lot of scripture to formulate this new covenant theology. And it's funny because at the same time, the Talmudic Jews do the same thing, where they post hoc rationalize, we lost our temple. This is why we did the same thing that happened in the first temple, but we're going to have a new covenant. And it's obviously for us. And they do the same thing. They cherry pick all the verses that make it clear. And they both have somewhat of a case to be made. I mean, if I really had to choose who makes the better case, I think the Talmudic Jews do. I do. I think the Christians are they're sort of just bastardizing the whole thing. They're sort of flipping the whole entire law code on its head. And Peter had a dream one day and said, we can all eat snakes and fish and poisonous whatever. We can eat whatever we want now. We can just eat like shellfish and pork because Peter had a dream. You know that time when Moses literally went up on Mount Sinai and met God face to face, and he gave him all these laws that he says these laws will never perish no matter what. You remember that time? Well, I changed my mind now. Peter's dream, the one that you can't verify if it's real, some guy just wrote it down, that's going to totally trump the entire law code of the Torah. It's crazy to think about that. That's why I just can't take Christianity seriously. It's a joke. So to continue, says, in my genealogy of morals, I give the first psychological explanation of the concepts underlying those two antithetical things, a noble morality and a resentment morality. The second of which is a mere product of the denial of the former. The Judeo-Christian moral system belongs to the second division, and in every detail, in order to be able to say nay to everything, representing an ascending evolution of life. This is the pagan worldview. The life aspiring, the life affirming That's what the pagan traditions are all about life affirming. That's why you have the phallus. That's why you have the festivals. That's why you have the raging, parties and the winemaking. And it's a life, dude. It's about celebrating this is why you have agricultural festivals about certain times of the year where there's certain harvesting and there's certain, the time for pruning grapes and the time for plucking grapes and the time for doing this. It's all about the earth, life, the here and now. Judaism and Christianity are all pointing to the next world, Olam Haba, the world to come in Hebrew, or heaven, the kingdom of heaven, which is also the world to come in Christianity. This world is corrupt. This world is going to perish. This world is not worth celebrating. This is why paintings and artworks and lavish festivals and celebrating birthdays are all sort of shunned among these traditions. That is too well-being, and that's why sex is so taboo. Having sex, the whole you can't, this whole and I'm not saying pagan traditions are all about degeneracy and just going out and doing whatever you want. No, there's definitely very strict moral codes about how to carry yourself and how to be in life, but it doesn't say that sex is something that's evil. That's why we naturally have those inclinations. You understand what I'm saying? There's a balance. It's the Dionysian and the Apollonian balance. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not all Dionysian. It's not all just sex and parties. It's not the Ammonite. That's the Ammonite view of ancient Greece. It's not that. There's a whole another side of the yin and the yang called the Apollonian, about control, about being honest, about the truth, about reason, those type of things. That is to well-being, to power, to beauty, to self-approval. The instincts of resentment here become downright genius. Had to invent an other world, as I mentioned, an other world, the world to come, in which the acceptance of life appeared as the most evil and abominable thing imaginable. I literally just said that. I was predicting what Nietzsche was going to say next. I've read this before, so that's probably why. The instincts of resentment here become downright genius. Had to invent another world, the world to come, heaven, in which the acceptance of life here and now appeared as the most evil and abominable thing imaginable. Psychologically, the Jews are a people gifted with the very strongest vitality. So much so that when they found themselves facing impossible conditions of life, they chose a voluntary and without profound talent for self-preservation, the side of all those instincts which make for decadence, not as if mastered by them, but as if detecting in them a power by which the world could be defied. The Jews are the very opposite of decadence. They have simply been forced into appearing in that guise, and with a degree of skill approaching the non plus ultra of histrionic genius, they have managed to put themselves at the head of all decadent movements. For example, the Christianity of Paul. And so, make of them something stronger than any party frankly saying yes to life. To the sort of men who reach out for power under Judaism and Christianity. That is to say, this is going back to what I brought up before I even brought up Nietzsche, the priestly class. Decadence is no more than a means to an end. Men of this sort have a vital interest in making mankind sick, brutal, and in confusing the values of good and bad, true and false, in a manner that is not only dangerous to life, but also slanders it. Brutal. He's brutal in this book, dude. It's brutal. It's awesome. Christianity sprang from a soil so corrupt that on it, everything natural value, every reality was opposed by the deepest instincts of the ruling class. It grew up as a sort of war to death upon reality. And as such, it has never been surpassed. The holy people who had adopted the priestly values and priestly names for all things, and who, with terrible logical consistency, had rejected everything of the earth as unholy, worldly, sinful. This people put its instinct into a final formula that was logical to the point of self-annihilation. Self-annihilation. As Christianity is actually denied even the last form of reality, the holy people, the chosen people, people of Israel, Jewish reality itself, the phenomenon. And by the way, this is just talking about ethnically Jewish people. Christians are spiritually the vine of Israel. Once you become under Christ, you're grafted into the vine. It's not just about Jews, dude. It's about Christians too. The phenomenon is of the first order of importance. The small insurrectionary movement, which took the name of Jesus of Nazareth, is simply the Jewish instinct redivivus. In other words, it is the priestly instinct to come to such a pass that it can no longer endure a priest as a fact. It is the discovery of a state of existence even more fantastic than any before it, of a vision of life even more unreal than necessary in ecclesiastical organization. Christianity actually denies the church. So I brought this up in the context of talking about the Dark Ages, because here he says right in the beginning, we are Hyperboreans. We know well enough how remote our place is. And he even says, let us look each other in the face. Like, this is serious. Like, enough of this playing shit. Let us look each other in the face. We are Hyperboreans. We know well enough how remote our place is. Neither by land nor by water will you find the road to the Hyperboreans. Quoting Pindar. Even Pindar in his day knew that much about us. Beyond the north, which is literally what the word Hyperborean means in Greek, by the way. Hyper, beyond, Borea, north. Beyond the north, beyond the ice, beyond death, our life, our happiness, our culture. I don't know how this is. I was thinking I'm very left in a lot of cases. I'm like, the Republican Party just makes me sick. And it always has republicanism, conservatism. I've just never been a fan. I've always leaned to the left, even though the left just kind of pisses me off about a lot of shit. I think they're just like a bunch of pompous, self-righteous kind of assholes. And they don't even know, like, they don't like these people who don't even believe in objective morality, who are telling people about morality. It's kind of like a self-own kind of thing. People who are just like very performative, like they care about people who act like they care about like minorities, but then they just like lock their doors when they drive through the hood. That type of shit, right? So I always think to myself, am I a liberal or am I a conservative? And I don't think I'm either. I think I'm just a traditionalist. I think I cling to tradition, and it's not the Christian tradition. I cling to the traditions of our culture, which is not just religion, not just like Greek and Roman religion, but just our culture. Just our literature, our past, who we are as a people. I have a deep, profound love for European culture. I just do. So I don't know. I guess I'm not a conservative. I'm just a traditionalist guy, a hyper traditionalist, to the point where even Christianity to me is a form of liberalism in my mind. It's that very performative. Oh, we care about the poor and we care about the equality, that type of thing. That's a Christian worldview. And I brought this up because I think that's kind of what happened in the quote unquote dark ages. Is you had this flipping of the poles of morality, where the old world, and I know a lot of these neo-pagans who just don't get it. They don't read the primary sources. They think of paganism was like this this worldly egalitarian thing, and it's not. It is very much hyper ethnic, meaning every place you went in the ancient world, they had their own traditions. You know, you have your Germanic pagans, you have your Norse pagans, you have your Eleusinian mysteries in Athens, you have your Samothracian mysteries in Samothrace. You have they have their own, everywhere you go, they had their own very specific culture, and they understood. They compared themselves to each other. Zeus, Jupiter, Apollo, or Mars and Ares, and they did these things, but they understood that these were traditions that were local. And there wasn't a lot of holy wars over this stuff. They just got it. They just understood this. They were actually more peaceful as far as tradition goes under that system, I think. They fought over other things. They fought over land and politics and kingdoms and all types of stuff. But in the ancient world, you don't find, the Eleusinian priests are going to war against the Samothracian priests. It's a holy war. No, you don't find that. You do not find that. Even in different countries, even in Zoroastrian magi are not going to war with Roman imperial cultists. They're not doing that. They're fighting over other things, but not religion. But that's what happens in the Middle Ages. Arians are at war with the Catholics, and Muslims are at war with with Roman Christians. Zoroastrians you start getting these Abrahamic religions they don't want to share the world with other Abrahamic religions. They want to be the only Abrahamic religion, and that's because there's only one God. This is sort of getting into my debate topic that's coming up. There's only one Abrahamic God. There's only one God of Abraham. So all these people fighting over what that God is are eventually going to hate each other, which is what you see on the internet. You see a bunch of, look at these Unitarians, digging up all this horrible stuff about these Orthodox Christians. Look at this guy; he got arrested in 2005. These people are trying to kill each other. Literally, they're trying to end each other. They're trying to end people's careers over theology shit. It's wild. Thank you for gifting people. Is that what happened? I don't know what that was for, but thank you for that. For some reason, I don't see whenever that came up, I don't see the didn't come. It just came up on the screen. All right. So the point I'm making. Let me land this plane now. Let me land this plane of what I'm getting at. I think what happened is we had sort of a cultural shift in the Middle Ages that decided that our way of life was for some reason evil, demonic. I mean, you read Augustine, for example. Augustine is literally taking the word daimon, which in Greek just means divinity. It's cognate with the word deva in Hindu tradition. And he's literally saying that these are some sort of evil, demonic, it's the same word actually, that the word demon actually has some sort of negative connotation about these fallen angels, which is false because the word angel just means messenger in Greek. And daimons are messengers in a lot of cases. Hermes is literally the angelos. He's literally ho angelos, the angel, the messenger. So is Hermes a good angel? Well, no, he's a demon to them. He's not part of their tradition. So he's a demon. So that's weird. So there's this whole like they're like redefining things now. You know, Augustine and these guys, they're saying that this culture was demonic. They worship idols. They made images of gods. They did all this horrible stuff. They had orgies. They had, you know, they'd sacrifice animals, which is what the Jews did anyway. So, a lot of the stuff they point to is actually in their Old Testament, which is ironic. And for some reason, there was a cultural decline. And I think there's a lot of I don't know if it makes sense. What I'm getting at is when we look at this period called the early Middle Ages, coupled with obviously things that no one can control, which is plagues. I think there's good reason why there was such a cultural decline. The Renaissance. What was the Renaissance? The Renaissance. What was it? People talk about what was it? Christianity realizing its greatness? Is that what people think? I bet you there are some people who actually think that. I would bet all my money there are people who think the Renaissance was some sort of Christian thing, right? Because after all, it's happening underneath the Catholic Church, and it's got to be a Christian thing, right? 14th to 17th century, right? But it's not. The Renaissance was a rebirth. That's what the word means, rebirth of ideas that precede the Christian world. Rediscovery. So this is what's the definition from Wikipedia. The Renaissance's intellectual basis was founded on this version of humanism derived from the concept of Roman humanitas and this is, I think this is way more important than the former, rediscovery of classical Greek philosophy, such as that of Protagoras, who said that man is the measure of all things. Big Nietzsche. Nietzsche is a big fan of this guy. He writes about him a lot. Man is the measure of all things. That's it. That's not a Christian epigram. Man is the measure of all things. Although the invention of metal movable type sped the dissemination of ideas from the later 15th century, the changes to the Renaissance were not uniform across Europe. The first traces appear in Italy's early 13th century in the writings of Dante. By the way, Dante is a fucking genius. He is a fucking genius. Read Dante.
At Aiden1L dropped $2 super chat. Do you think Aesir worship could transfer to Plato?
Do I think Aesir worship could transfer to Plato? What do you mean by transfer? I'm serious. I'm not really sure. I'm not trying to be like Jordan Peterson on you. What do you mean by? I'm actually looking at the chat. If you want to just say, what do you mean by? You don't have to write another super chat. I'm looking up for you. Transfer, because, I mean, you can Platonize almost any tradition if you want. You can map on Platonism onto anything. Sometimes you have to invent the idea of the one and just sort of, he said, to Platonism. I think I know what you mean. So, like, the Aesir worship in the Norse or the German, the Aesir from the Norse religion, it's not Platonic, obviously. It's not Platonism. It's not Platonism. It's a very old paradigm that you find in Proto-Indo-European traditions, usually with some sort of, warrior class, priestly class type of thing. I do think Plato is drawing from that cultural soup, but he's obviously revolutionizing it in a way that's never been seen before. So I think you can reform Aesir worship to be Platonic. Absolutely. I mean, why not? You can do that to anything. So it depends on like how you want to structure it, how are you going to map it on, basically. So, like, for example, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of like, like, you know, the word God, for example, is actually a Germanic word. So you can just say God, just singular God, as the one, and just you sort of use that, and it's actually, you're just staying within your own tradition. You're not even adopting any other like linguistic or cultural things, and then you can sort of emanate the whole Aesir hierarchy from there. I think that's how you would do it. So, back to the Renaissance real quick. The Renaissance was a rediscovery of the Greek and Latin traditions of the world that predate Christianity. Dante, I mean, you can't go a page on Dante's trilogy without running into some invocation of the muses or some sort of pagan reference in a positive light, though, not in a negative light. Not like
Mage dropped $20 super chat. Aesir, Vonia, Jun's different families of gods that compete. Some are chaotic like Jotuns. Aesir represent the ordered cosmos. Hails.
Yeah, and I think that's. I think if you really wanted to Platonize the Aesir, the Aesir or Vanir, whatever you wanted to do, you can.
1L dropped $2 super chat. Do you have any
but it's
proof
not
about
necessary.
Aesir to Greek god?
Oh, next one. Do you have any proof about Aesir to Greek god? I don't know what you mean by that. Aesir to Greek god. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Any proof of what? Like any? Are you talking about like a comparative religion thing? There are plenty of books on that type of thing, comparing Greek and Norse gods. You know, Freya and Aphrodite, that type of thing. But I don't know about proof. These are all basically comparative things. This is a comparative methodology of comparing myths, comparing traditions, and seeing what maps on. It's never one to one. So it's always just, oh, this god has a lot of similarities with this god, or this god linguistically sounds like this god, that type of thing. So thank you for that, though. And yeah, like Dante, for example, they are reincorporating the old culture, and that's what we have today. Now we have sort of a huge. We have all these. We have our whole like genealogy of our cultural norms that all make its way either into the Judeo-Christian pathway that influences today, because obviously Judeo-Christianity has massive influence on the world today. And then there's the pagan, quote unquote, influence on things. And they're sort of like intertwined now.
At Agro_Mage dropped $2 super chat. Tacitus, Germania. Interpretatio Romana.
Yeah, and that's an ancient source for that. That's a good source. But you can also find like more modern books on, like this one right here, Comparative Mythology, Jean Pouvel. It's an older book, but it goes through the this is what it says in the back. John Pouvel unravels the prehistoric Indo-European origins of the traditions of India and Iran, Greece and Rome, Celts, Germans, Balts, and Slavs. Utilizing the methodologies of historical linguistics and archaeology, reconstructs shared religious, mythological, cultural heritage, separates chapters on individual traditions as well as recurrent themes: God, warrior, king, and virgin, fire and water. Give life to comparative mythology as a book. Yeah, and this book just goes really deep into comparing these gods. Another one is Georges Dumézil, obviously is big into this stuff. He wrote the book called Mitra Varuna. I have it over here somewhere. I don't know where I did with it. But there's a lot of stuff on there about that stuff you can find.
At Aiden1L dropped $2 super chat. Have you seen Hercules in New York? Peak Hino.
Hercules in New York. I don't even know what that is. Hercules in, oh, it's the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I haven't seen that. I don't know. I've never even heard of it. I'm surprised. I don't know how I missed that my whole childhood. Hercules in New York, 1970 fantasy action comedy. Never seen it. But I'll check it out. I guess all I'm trying to get at in this little discussion here was I started off talking about sort of soil of Christianity and what I think, some of these subjects of mine that I'm very passionate about, which is non-Jewish influence on Christianity is one of the big ones. I mean, I had this. You guys got to see this. This is so crazy. I actually want to go to my Twitter, and there's this dude. There's this quote unquote scholar. He's obviously a MDiv, Master of Divinity scholar. So obvious. I can tell within seconds if a PhD is from an MDiv or not. Within seconds, when the way they talk about the Bible, the way their knee-jerk reactions to certain things that you bring up, you can tell. You could just tell. Oh my God, this guy's an MDiv. He's been trained in a certain way to talk about the Bible. So this guy right here. Let me share my screen. John Dixon. So this guy, he's got he clearly looks like he's in a church. This is another thing. Is like this conflict of interest shit that's going on, where they're just giving out PhDs like it's going out of style to pure, like completely biased. Look at this guy. He's pretending to look like a scientist with like look at what is he doing? You're not a scientist, dude. He's got a ruler and he's got to look under this, like he's gonna like examine some fucking biology shit. Dude, stop it. You're an MDiv. You have a Master's of Divinity. They taught you how to read the Old Testament and how to compare it to the New Testament. That's what you did. You don't know anything. Your Greek is probably terrible. You probably never read Homer. You probably never read Plato. You probably never read all the classics. You probably have no idea what the culture of the world of the first century was even like. And you study this Bible and you teach people about Christianity, but you don't even know the culture of what it came from. There's another super chat. You guys are dropping them on me tonight. I like this. Thank you. Thank you.
At Aiden1L dropped $5 super chat. One time Fuentes said that Christianity saved Europe or whatever, and I told him it started the Dark Age.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's one more, I think, coming up in a second, but I'm going to go back to this one in a second. Thank you, Teppo, too. Here's your PhD for being in the cult. I don't know about that. We'll talk about I'll give you my thoughts on that.
At Teppo_ dropped $5 super chat. Here's your PhD for being in the cult.
I understand why you say that. Because there's literally, I'm not kidding. If I can even find it right now, if I can find you guys, I want to find it for you guys right now. There's statements of faith. Let me see if I can find it. Statements of faith. Maybe it's in my. Hey, am I still sharing my screen right now? Yeah. Let me just give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find something real quick. I might have posted about it before. So let me just see if I can go to my statements. Yes, here we go. Check this out, guys. Check this out. So when I talk about PhDs in biblical studies, I'm talking about very particular MDiv people who are from a very particular leaning. And they have a lot of biases and this is not just me saying this, is a lot of other scholars who agree on this. This is like a big problem. People talk about this problem all the time. Statements of faith, right? I made a whole post on this. Look at this. This is from McMaster Divinity College. And to get into this college, to get a master's degree from here, to get an MDiv from here, you have to sign a statement of freaking faith, dude. Look at this. McMaster Divinity. To apply, we affirm. This is a college giving out master's degrees for people who will go on to get PhDs and become doctors teaching the Bible. This is like West Huff shit. This is the West Huff pipeline right here. We affirm that Jesus Christ, born of the Virgin Mary, is the Son of God and fully human, and is the complete revelation of God, the one mediator between God and humankind, that Jesus Christ, through his earthly life and mission, his sacrificial blah, 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 blah. We affirm the scriptures, the Old and the New Testaments, have been given to us by the inspiration of God as the standard for Christian. Now, do you think someone who signs this is going to be taught really good methodology on how to critique the Bible? You think they're going to be taught, they might learn about Noah, an Epic of Gilgamesh. They might learn about that. I mean, all of them, they all know that story. Oh, look at Noah, looks just like Epic of Gilgamesh. Everyone fucking knows that story. But are they really going to go beyond like the most obvious surface level shit and actually study the culture milieu of these texts? I don't think so. And also, even if you did get your degree from here and you don't believe in this stuff, now you have to lie. Now you've signed a statement of faith and you're literally lying to the college that got you your degree. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You have to lie no matter what. They're forcing you to be a liar. They're not forcing you to be an honest scholar. So this is like a problem. This is still going on today. People are getting PhDs from these MDiv schools.
At Funky Pizza Productions 2204 drop $5 super chat. I've been on a Tracy Twyman rabbit hole lately. Almost done with crop shavings and recently finished Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge. Are you famo?
Almost finished clock shavings and recently finished Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge. I'm not very familiar with Tracy Twyman, but I'll definitely keep that in mind, something to look into. That sounds pretty interesting. Thank you for the $5. No, appreciate you. And so, yeah, like what Teppa was saying, that's as far as this goes. Yes, this is sort of very culty, and these people try to portray themselves as being objective. And it's so. I want to show you right now how obviously they're not. After this last super chat.
$5 super chat. Bede's reckoning of time literally explains where modern Easter comes from. Eos Ramoneth. Monks telling on themselves constantly.
Yeah, it's the name of Easter that he's saying. He's saying the reason why we call it Easter in the north is because of the month Easter Moneb, which is from the goddess Eostre. So there's a fertility goddess. There's some inscriptions about her. We don't know much, but the name Eos is dawn, is the root for dawn. She's a dawn goddess. So we have a dawn goddess, fertility goddess, whose month was the same month as Easter or Pesach. And yeah, this is from Christian sources telling us this stuff. So yeah, there's definitely an issue here. And back to what you were saying real quick. Absolutely. Europe, once it became Christianized, it was more divided than ever. I mean, look at the late Middle Ages, where you have when you start to get Protestants and you start to get all these different denominations in the East-West schism. They are fighting over Christianity.
Funky Pizza Productions 2204 dropped $2 super chat. Ask Kurt Metzger about Tracy Twyman.
All right, I definitely will. Thank you for that. I definitely will. And they're fighting to 1204. The Fourth Crusade was Christians killing other Christians. The Crusades wasn't about Muslims and Christians. The Fourth Crusade is about Christians killing other Christians. And then, pushing all the Puritans to the New World and the Anglicans for killing all the Catholics and the Catholics killing Orthodox Christians and the the Calvinists going to war against the Lutherans. There's like gang violence against each other. And even Christianity and Islam, they're both the same in the sense that they both worship the God of Abraham in a post-temple world where the angel Gabriel delivers a message to Muhammad and says, I want to add on more stuff to the greatness of this Judeo-Christian tradition. And they hate each other because they can't live together. You have to be exactly like me and follow my bishops, or I hate you. That's what it is. So Europe was not saved by Christianity. It was cut up and divided up and castrated by Christianity. 100%. It was castrated and cut up and divided up by Christianity. That's what happened. Okay, so these statements of faith, we know they exist, and we know they're producing people like this guy right here. This guy who's literally preaching in a church on one photo, and then another photo, he's pretending to be a scientist. I mean, let's just look at his face, dude. Does that guy look like someone who's gonna be I'm not going to get into his face. Actually, that's not fun. That's not fun. But you could just tell by looking at people what kind of person they are. So this guy puts out a post. This is likely the earliest Christian symbol. Maybe it could be a 200 AD. Yeah, maybe, because there's not a lot of symbols. Like I said, images were sort of like banned. They were like Jews in the beginning. They didn't have images. So it appears in the oldest manuscript of the Gospel of Luke around 200 AD. Now, it doesn't write this, but this is an Alexandrian text type. That's important. It's an Alexandrian text type. So it's in Egypt. 200 AD in Egypt was a time when Osiris, Serapis, Isis, Harpocrates was thriving. It was the biggest religion of that time period. So just keep that in mind. Remember, these people do not study the cultural milieu. They don't care about that. They care about Bible. That's all they care about. Literally, they don't care about the cultural milieu. They care about the Bible.
At Aiden1L dropped $5 super chat. If we end Christianity, will we save the West? I meant 400 BCE when the Dark Ages started and Christianity began.
You mean 400 AD? CE. I don't think that's what's going to save the West. I think there's going to be a lot more than just, I don't think you can ever end Christianity. I think people need to adopt sort of cultural norms. That's going to be more it's not just about getting rid of one thing. It's about living a totally different way. Cultural norms need to be that type of thing. It's not just about getting rid of things. It's not just about demolition. It's about building. So thank you for that super chat. He writes, it is clever ligature superimposing the Greek letters tau and rho to depict a man hanging on a cross. That's what he sees there. He sees a man hanging on the cross. Now, you know what's funny is no one ever says that. No one ever says, I think this is a man hanging on a cross. He just literally decided that's what he thinks it is. That's fine. You could think that. But it's not like the scribe wrote down, I'm gonna randomly take this one word, stauros, and I'm going to make it into a cross as a nomina sacra, is what they call it, nomina sacra, where you take a word like iota, eta, sigma, yes for Jesus, or a Greek, or the Cairo. This is a tauro. So, okay. Even better, the scribe formed this image with the Greek word cross. In the words of Jesus, whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be a disciple. So, out of all the words in this entire manuscript, this scribe just did one logogram, or whatever you want to call it. It's nomina sacra, one of them. And he chose the words cross to make a symbol of a cross. And notice how the word starts with S, but he only picked the word tau and rho. That's what he's being very selective. This is not some sort of natural formation. This is a man-made invention on purpose. So the question is why? Now people like him will say it was to save space. Really? To save space? Why? So why just the word cross? Why wouldn't you why wouldn't you go through the whole manuscript? Let's see. Maybe I can find the whole manuscript. I think it's Luke manuscript. Here, let me see if I can find. I think it's, what is it called? Which manuscript is it? It is from. Hold on 1 second. I know I have it here somewhere because I was just talking about it. It's from the manuscript of P66. Is that the one he's talking about, or is it P75? It actually doesn't matter. Let's just go with P75. P75 is this manuscript right here. So let me just move over my screen really quick and show you one more thing. Where am I? So just to show you what he's talking about here, so we're all on the same page. P75 is this one right here. It's the earliest Luke, and it's look, it's got the staurograph. There it is. It uses a staurograph in Luke 9:23, 4:27, and 2. So only in 3 places. That's it. So if you really wanted to save room, first of all, look at how much room it has at the bottom of the page. Oh, he wanted to save room. That's what this guy's saying. He wanted to save room, but he just had all this extra space. So you're already not being honest about the data. You're just making things up right now because they don't want to actually look at what the fuck is actually going on here. Why is the author making a staurograph out of the word cross? Well, if you actually understand the cultural milieu of 200 AD Roman Egypt, where this is written, and you can tell by the text, this is Alexandrian text type. It almost has a Coptic looking feel to it. This is how Alexandrians would write Greek. I want to see if I can find the staurograph in here somewhere. It's been a while since I've looked at this, so it's probably, there's a few of them though. There's a couple of them. They pop out at you in certain places. And by the way, here's what this is what also something crazy at. This guy's an idiot because I didn't even realize this when I was going back and forth with him. If you look at the Coptic alphabet, let's see. Coptic alphabet. Coptic script, which goes back to like 2nd century, right around this time, actually. They have this character in the alphabet. They have the Tauros looking kind of, look at this. It's here. Let me share my screen again. Sorry about this. So this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to prove it to you guys. This guy's an idiot. So the Coptic alphabet, you go to Coptic script. This is in Egypt. This is an Egyptian writing. They have this. There it is. They have this. This is part of their writing system. This is Egyptian, right? Egyptian writing. Okay, so we know that this is like something that's happening only in Egypt for some reason. Why in Egypt? What's going on in 200 AD in Egypt where someone would decide just the word cross, and I already demonstrated it's not to save space. There's a whole huge chunk at the bottom. So what's going on, John? Why would they make this cross out of these 2 letters? It doesn't even start with S in the first place. Why? And I told him why. And I knew that this guy was going to. I knew because he's a big West Huff. He's like a West Huff follower. I knew that he wasn't going to accept this. I was like kind of baiting him, and he took the bait. So he writes, unrelated to the Egyptian Ankh. And I said, you don't know that. The Ankh? This is what he just writes. Unrelated to the Egyptian Ankh. Just flat out, I don't know anything about Egypt. I don't know anything about 200 AD Rome and Alexandria, but I'm just going to tell you this. And I wrote, you don't know that. The Ankh means life, just so you guys know. The Egyptian Ankh, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. I'm not like, so anyone confused about this can understand that I'm not just like saying things out of my ass. Where is it? Ankh. The Egyptian Ankh the key of life is the hieroglyphic symbol that represents the word life. And by extension is a symbol of life itself. And also it means eternal life too. It's a symbol for eternity in life itself. It's used in the cult of Ion. And there's Christian scribes that talk about other pagans using this symbol. And how they talk about Christians and not Christians and pagans use this symbol. Now, this guy didn't even know that Christians use this symbol. He doesn't even know that Judeans use this symbol before. So Hezekiah stone, you guys know the Hezekiah stone. This one right here. Where is it? This one right here. Even in Judaism, they use the symbol of life. This is the stone from the time of Hezekiah, a Jewish king. Life. So okay, so I already know the culture behind this thing. I know it doesn't have to be pagan. So you don't have to be a pagan to use this sign. I know what's going on here because I understand the cultural milieu. This guy doesn't. He does not understand. He's so scared that they would bow an Egyptian ankh because he thinks that would mean it's pagan. It's not. And I said, in 200 AD is a time when Serapis, Harpocrates, Isis cults were thriving in Alexandria. This would be like me using a Nike symbol today with a very slight variation because I wanted to make a check mark or something. And I purposely used the Nike symbol to make a check mark. But you guys, a modern audience would all recognize that's a Nike symbol. I know what a Nike symbol is. I see it every fucking day. I walk right past them every single day. Everyone's wearing Nikes on their feet, right? You would never deny that. So I wrote, with a slight, like Nike symbol, easily recognizable who sees it. The Tau Rho is certainly a nomina sacra, like the XR and the IHS, which are attested very early, but I don't think you can just rule out secondary influence to make that symbol during a time when it would be very recognizable. That's the key word here. You don't just use symbols that are recognizable and pretend that no one's going to recognize it. You can't do that. You can't get away with that, especially in places like Alexandria, Rome, and Pergamum, where the cult of Isis and Osiris are thriving. Other Christian authors early on talk about crosses being symbols for other gods like Ion and Serapis and Socrates. Scholasticus mentions that pagans and Christians claim this symbol. And I'm going to show you where Christians actually use the symbol. So what does he say? He responds to this. Oh, did he delete it? Did he delete it? Sometimes Twitter's weird with like the and then he wrote, okay, here we go. He wrote, they are unrelated. The loop. So here we go. This is the Dan McClellan shit right here. When I brought up that Harpocrates is born on December 25th, he said, the word is peri. It means around December 25th. Oh no. The loop isn't even in the right position. He's gonna regret this. To be an Egyptian ankh. The starogram is simply a ligature of, and look, this is him like just, I never doubted this. I know it's a ligature. I know it is. I know what they're doing, but I know what they're trying to invoke, because why would you just make a random ligature for a cross out of nowhere? No one does this. Scribes don't just randomly make ligatures in text because they mean something, just like the Coptic alphabet uses the Tau Rho to be a symbol of eternal life. They're repurposing the Egyptian ankh for Christianity. And I literally just said that. I'm saying the motivation for making TR into a starogram could be because the ankh symbol is in a different position. That's funny because the Coptic alphabet that has the Tau Rho actually invokes it as a symbol of eternal life.
Super chat.
Did you know that?
Z Pinch paper by Dr. Anthony L. Peratt, plasma physicist. Discusses idea global petroglyphs were witness depictions of plasma events/s. Infer origin of light dying/rising god myths and cross/ankh symbol.
Where's your super chat? I can't see it on my thing. Where'd it go? Oh, it's right there. Thank you. All right. Plasma physicist discusses idea global petroglyphs where witnesses depictions of plasma events. Huh. I never heard of that before. Something to look into. I never heard of that before. But anyways, thank you for that super chat, man. So I go, so he thinks there's no evidence of that connection. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So I destroy him in the next one. Here's an actual Christian, Egyptian Christian piece of papyri where they literally are showing, this is from like 400 AD, 300, 400 AD. And they literally are using ankhs. There's no denying it's an ankh. And it has the Chi Rho inside of it. Chi Rho inside of it. And there's crosses inside of it. Dude, you're an idiot. And here's another piece of evidence. Here's another early church manuscript where they literally have the fucking ankh in the manuscript. The symbol of eternal life, applying it to Christianity. Is this parallelomania? He called me parallelomania, he said. He said, we must avoid parallelomania. This is not parallelomania. And by the way, I made a point, says, is it no longer inspiration for Starpeia coffee because they use the same colors, but they have a different face? Are we going to rule out? Because, there's a little bit of a tweak going on with the loop. So it can't be the same. Dude, you guys suck. You guys suck so bad at your jobs. And we know what you're doing. You're just apologists dressed up like scholars. You guys should have THDs. They used to give out THDs back in the day. Used to find scholars with THDs, and everyone would know not to take them as much serious. They're just theologians. They don't really know the history. They don't have good methodology. They just know the Bible. Fine, I'll listen to you about the Bible, but I don't want to hear your takes on history or comparative stuff. I don't want to hear shit because you don't know what you're talking about. So I showed him the evidence, and by the way, it's even worse. I found I bring an even more well-known. Watch this. Parallelomania is when I say Jesus wore sandals and Osiris are the same thing. We are talking about a well-known, recognizable symbol used in Roman religion during this exact time that had a deep meaning of eternal life. The idea that scribes would randomly choose to take a T and a rho and put them together with a slight variation makes sense because the symbol would be recognizable to any second century pagan, regardless of where the loop is. The symbol is Christian, no doubt, and the loop is to the right because of the rho. But that would be like saying that the Starapeia, and I already mentioned that. You can't rule that out. He says you are free to continue imagining this connection. But given we know exactly how and why this image was formed, no, you don't. You just made up that it was used to save room when the manuscript has literally a huge chunk at the end. So you don't even know you don't know why he did this. You're just assuming you do. Now check this out. I brought up, and not in this thread, but in a different, because somehow I got into a different thread with him. Let me see if I can find it. Where'd it go? Wait, how am I not finding this one all of a sudden? I could probably just pull it up though. Let me see. Let me see if I can find. Wait, where did I put so this one is, okay, is it this one? Here we go. Okay. So I found another one. So he says the explanation is plain. A second century scribe worked out that you can depict a man on a cross within a word cross. Yeah. You could literally find any word, any single word, and with a T and an R in it, and make this. but they chose the word for cross. Why do you think they did that? Because of this. Coptic funeral relief, where both the symbols stand side by side. There it is. There is an Ankh, there is a Tau Rho, there's another Ankh. Must be parallelomania, he says. He says. And then he writes, they are obviously not the same symbol. Well, first of all, I'm not saying they're the exact same symbol. I'm saying they're being used as synonymously. I mean, this is very clear if you know the culture, like I'm saying. So I said they just put them right next to each other in multiple inscriptions, nothing to see. And then this is what he writes. He never responds after this. He never responds after this. The symbol you are excited about does not have a row-like loop, but has an S-style squiggle. The parallel is superficial at best. This guy's an idiot. He's now denying that this is a Tau Rho because there's a little squiggle right here. But did you guys know that in Greek, some rows actually have the squiggle? So he doesn't even know. He doesn't even. By the way, I forgot to respond to that. I'm going to say since you refuse to respond to this, I'm going to put since you refuse to respond, let me educate you. Rows can have squiggles sometimes, rarely.
At Aiden1L dropped $5 super chat. I loved your idea that Christians came out of Syria. Myth was talking about Syriacs and Islam too. You think Jews were behind Christianity being pushed?
Here is a row with a squiggle. You just don't know the sources. You are just unaware of really basic stuff. All right, now watch this. I'm going to throw the bomb on him now. Boom. There's a row with a squiggle. So he just got destroyed, and he stopped. Once I gave him this, he just stopped responding because he knows it's over with. By the way, that's Latin up here because you can see that's a Latin N. So that's why they had the squiggle, because they're actually using. It actually looks like they're taking a Latin row or some sort of in between, because it looks like the original Greek Tau Rho, but they put a squiggle there. And as I showed you guys, you can have a squiggle with rho. It's rare, but you can have one. This is a Greek alphabet. That's a squiggle on a row. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He got destroyed. These type of people are literally like the these are the ones who are going to get on the most podcasts, who are going to change the most minds. Look, hey, Wesley Huff joins us for this conversation about Joe Rogan, skepticism, our changing culture. This is it. Like, this is who we're dealing with. These people are not doing good work. They're doing apologetics. They are spreading the word. Wes even admits this. He came to Joe Rogan to spread the gospel. He's not a scholar. These aren't academics. Why do they have PhDs? I don't know. They should not have these. They should have THDs. And you can tell. You can tell he doesn't know what he's doing. You can tell he's full of it. Was there a super chat? Was I missing one? Here we go. Aiden, thank you for the 5. I loved your idea that Christians came out of Syria. Myth was talking about Syriacs in Islam too. You think Jews were behind Christianity being pushed? Well, first of all, it came out of Jerusalem first. Then they they go into Syria and Alexandria are like the main two. Antioch, Syria, it's where the book of Acts claims where they first became Christians. They first started calling themselves something other than Jew. Is in Alexandria. Or I'm sorry, is in Syria. So yeah, Syria is a big part of the origins of Christianity, but it ultimately comes out of Jerusalem. It's ultimately a Jewish sect. So that's what was going on there. That's what I to clarify. I don't know what exactly you're talking about, but that's what I would say. So thank you for that. So yeah, these people don't actually engage in good scholarship. They're not serious. They're pastors. They're glorified pastors. In fact, let me just make another post out of this. Actually, I'm gonna leave that alone for now. Yeah, let me just that's fine. 1.3 thousand people saw my Parallelomania thing. I guess I don't have to make a post out of it. But it's like we have to engage. We have to go out and we have to respond to these people in the comment sections because at least there's going to be a few people who are going to read this and go, "Wow, that was a good argument. I didn't know that the Ankh symbol meant life. I didn't know that there are literally Christian tombstones with Ankhs on them. I didn't know any of this stuff." So we have to do this stuff. We have to, even though it sucks. I feel like you're jumping in the mud with these people, but you have to, because there are people out there on the fence who don't know this information. They literally just think that these PhDs are being honest. And I'm talking about very specific kind of PhD. I'm not talking about like fucking scientist or even like Egyptologist or anything like that. I'm talking about Bible scholar PhDs who get their MDivs from a school that's completely biased and making people sign statements of faith, and then they get their PhD somehow after that. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a weird little loophole that I'm noticing.
At Jimmy, you 187 dropped $5 super chat. Do the people doing apologetics actually believe their arguments, or do they feel like it's okay to trick you because God is real?
That's a really, really good question because it gets into the psyche of some of these people. What is behind if these people are like this guy who I just engaged with? I was throwing all these facts at him. I was showing him physical archaeological evidence of Christians using the Ankh symbol for Jesus. And he's just flat out denying, like there's just some sort of block going on. You know what I mean? So they're aware that their information is wrong. They have to be. Like Wes Huff, he has to be aware that his information is faulty. But I think there's something going on in the brain when you want something to be true, you'll get it to be true. You'll make it true. You'll force it that. I do believe that that's what's going on. That it's a little bit of both. They believe their shit, but they're also aware that there's a lot of bullshit going on. That's how I would describe it. It's kind of fascinating to watch people in that mental state. This is the same thing for the what do you call it? The pyramids are made from like a power plant type of thing. They have the same sort of psyche going on.
At Right Eyes 6409 dropped $5 super chat. On Huff, what kind man goes to another man's wedding, Billy Carson, and then releases a video to discredit him?
Yeah, I didn't know about that. I never knew that he went to his wedding. But wasn't it the guy that invited them both on that he like? It wasn't Wes Huff, I don't think, that went to his wedding, was it? If that's the case, that is pretty wild. I thought it was the guy who Wes Huff invited, or who invited Wes Huff. That's what I thought. But that is pretty crazy. Confirmation bias.
At AZZ7ECH dropped $2 Australian super chat. Everyone suffers some confirmation bias.
Yeah, we all do. You're absolutely right. We all do. We all suffer from confirmation bias. But that's what methodology comes in. If you apply good methodology to your work, you will be able to overcome your own biases and check your own biases. That's what methodology comes in. That's where checking your sources. That's where being very rigorous and being very skeptical of things. That's where it all comes in. Thank you for that.
At Apocalypsis Historia dropped $2 super chat. Ironic that Tertullian and Augustine are Phoenician.
Is Tertullian Phoenician? I thought he was. You're talking about Carthaginian, right? Yeah, I guess that is Phoenician. Yeah. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of bishops from Carthage. I mean, Carthage was a Roman. It's a Roman place. So at that time.
_pan_Danny B's dropped $2 super chat. Bro, I got 30 minutes before bed. Still want to hear theory.
Yeah. I was gonna open up the floor for a few minutes. I was gonna do it right around the second hour. Let me send you. Let me bring up the. I'll bring up the link in just about a couple minutes. I just want to talk about one more thing. So another thing I wanted to bring up was I'm doing I'm on top of the debate that I'm doing about the Jesus or the Christians worshiping the same God as the Muslims. You know, that debate I brought up. Let me see this one right here. I brought this up in the beginning of the stream, which was this debate right here. So that debate's coming up. So on top of this, I'm also doing another debate about 2 days after this, which is going to be in person on Matt Beal's show. And it's with Dan Dedunking. Dan Dedunking. What is his name again? Dan Dedunking. Dan Dedunking. Dedunking Dan. What's his name? Dan Richards. Okay, this guy. So I'm going to be debating this guy right here, who had me blocked for a long time. He absolutely lost his shit against me. I wonder if I can find that. I wonder if I can find that back and forth where he went absolutely crazy on me. This is on January 2nd. This might be it.
At Smillstill dropped $5 super chat. They are just willing to believe extreme possibilities like Fox Mulder. All evidence to the contrary is not entirely convincing. They want to believe.
Thank you for that. Yeah, this is what it is. This is the same psychological profile we're seeing with the ancient aliens, ancient pyramids, or all this stuff. I'm about to show you what I'm talking about, and then before I open the floors.
At YesNo100 dropped $9.99 super chat. Hey Neil, would I be able to reach you through your Patreon?
Yes.
Love your research. I have about 2 questions I'd like to ask you.
Yes, I'm glad you reminded me. I need to check my Patreon messages tonight. I'm not going to forget. I'm writing it down right now, actually. Patreon. I've been neglecting the Patreon messages. So if you've been writing a message on Patreon and I didn't respond recently, last week and a half to 10 days, I will be checking them very soon. Maybe even long. Maybe it's been like a month, actually. Sorry. I'm going to check the Patreon messages tonight. I got to figure out a way to get those notifications coming from Patreon. That's what I got to figure out. So I don't miss those. So thank you for that. Definitely join my Patreon and I'll definitely respond to you. So this is who I'm debating. For context, Gnostic Informer and I have been friends for a couple of years. We've always been polite, but recently he's been less so to me. And today he called me stupid. It don't bug me when blah, blah, blah calls me names, but Neil was a friend. Okay. I don't remember him calling him stupid. Maybe I did. I think I called his idea stupid, actually. But let's see if I can find it. I wonder if I can find it in here. No. And this is probably before he blocked me. This is probably right after he blocked me. Where is it? Where he literally says, I'm going to January 2nd. Is there a way I can? No, I'm not going to go through all this stuff. I can't find it. Is there a way you can search? Do you guys know if there's a way you can search for a back and forth between two people? Like if I'm in this, that's April. See, look, he's calling me a good dude in April. And then in January, he fucking hates me. Here, okay, here we go. This is the thread. All right, I found it. So he says, he's talking about the Sea Peoples, and he's going back and forth with Dave Miano. And I said, one more super chat came up. Thank you for the supers. And I said, if someone, so he writes, if someone claims to care about ancient history, but they will change.
At Right Eye 6409 dropped $5 super chat. Huff was definitely a guest at Billy Carson's small wedding. Just checked. And Dan called you out on Derp. Can't wait.
Nice. He called me out on Derp. I got to watch that. Or it's like world wrestling going on here. Okay, so this is where it all started. Dan wrote something about the Sea People, and he claims that Dave, he says, if someone claims to care about history, you will change the facts. They're in for the ego. Were the Pelestet Sea Peoples for sure? For Dave, it depends who he asked. Receipts in the comments. So I watched this, and I watched this was Dan's video, and I wrote to him, you are 100% right to point out that the Sea Peoples are not something scholars have an overwhelming consensus on. Now, at the time, I didn't know this, but that's what Dave Miano actually says. Dave Miano was citing sources that conflict with each other because he was pointing out this person says this, and this person says this, and this person says this. He was actually doing what a scholar is supposed to do, to give you the different conflicting theories on this stuff. And he used this against him for Dave. It depends on who asks. That's not what happened. It was totally dishonest. I didn't know this at the time. I was being good faith because we were friends at the time. So I wrote, it's one of the most debated subjects in history, and there is tons of nuance involved. But where did Dave say that this was something scholars have objectively settled on? I don't have time to watch this whole video. I'm legitimately in good faith trying to see what your criticism is here. He writes, in the video showed two clips of Dave. In one, he is just talking in general about general video about SP. It says the Pelestet were good candidates, but we don't know for sure. In the other, he's responding to me about SP are hypothetical, and he claims the Pelestet certainly were Sea People. So then Dave responds, his criticism is that one video I said that Luca and the Pelestet are most likely the Lycaeans and Philistines, whereas in another video I said that they were Lycaeans and the Philistines. He thinks this is a major gotcha, but he doesn't realize that in history there's never certainty. So I totally understand what he's saying there. This is really, really bad faith what Dan is doing here. It's all smoke and mirrors for the audience who don't know what's going on. It's like he knows there's a lot of dumb people watching him. So if he makes it sound like he's trying to make a scene where there's nothing there. So then I wrote to him. Wait, where did I know there's more. I know there's more. So let me just see. Okay, so here. I think it's down here, maybe. I want to find where, because this gets worse, dude. He starts like, I'm gonna fucking drag your ass. Where is it? Wait, where did it go? That's annoying. Twitter's really annoying, man. There it is. Okay. So then he writes, they're well beyond the hypothesis, take the L. There's as much evidence for them, talking about Sea Peoples, which is nonsense, than there is for Atlantis, as we have covered before. What? Wait. The Bronze Age collapse happened. That's a fact. We know that. Atlantis is something way back that we can't even get to, besides Plato. So that's a crazy statement. So now that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard you just complete. Now notice I didn't call him stupid. I didn't call Dan stupid. So he loses it. I go, and I say this to everybody. I tell everyone that their ideas are dumb. This is what I do. I'll say it to I say it to Derek all the time. Say it to fucking everybody. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm saying that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard You just completely blew up your entire argument here. Just as much for Atlantis. How? We have literal primary sources from the Egyptians, Babylonians, Armana letters, Ugarit, Hittite texts, clay tablets that discuss people raiding from the sea. Hence, sea people. These are contemporary first-hand accounts that mention these raids from various tribes and cities. We also have the destruction layers in the archaeological record and multiple Bronze Age cities, whether we call them sea people or identify them as Proto-Greeks, Pelasgian, Lycians, Achaeans, Cretans, it doesn't matter. But the idea that this is something that is on par with Atlantis is just stupid. There is nothing contemporary from Atlantis ever discovered. None archaeological, no first-hand accounts, primary sources. Just Plato writing about it thousands of years later. Now watch this. Holy shit, he loses it. We were friends. We were good friends. We were on really good terms until I said that. Now I just want you as the audience. Is this really that bad? That I said this is the dumbest thing I ever heard, dude. Do you say it to your friends and your brothers and sisters and your mom and dad? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Seriously, is that really that bad of a thing to say to somebody? But this egomaniac, absolute egomaniac, lost his shit. Dude, I'm going to let you off the hook before you drag you like a dog. This will be the last time I'll allow our friendship to shield you. You're missing the point I made and calling me dumb as you do. You owe me an apology. And I never called him dumb. You can look, I just read it to you. I never called him dumb. I said, and I even said it right here. I'm not calling you dumb. I'm saying that what you said is the dumbest thing I've ever heard on this subject. You're ignoring the archaeological evidence on the top contemporary primary sources for the Bronze Age. There is no comparison between the Sea Peoples and Atlantis in regard to the evidence. Go ahead, drag me. Am I supposed to be scared? So he goes, okay, you're just going to stop. So you're just not going to stop. So here it is in kid speak. If you had a handful of contemporary accounts or a mountain of ancient accounts, you cannot dismiss either out of hand. I don't know what he's talking about here. Do you reject the sun dancing Fatima eyewitness accounts? Why? Okay, this ain't tricky. First of all, the sun dancing Fatima accounts, if you actually look that up, there's a lot of reason to doubt that. I'm not going to sit there and talk about this as like it's totally debunked. That's not what I'm saying. There might have been something going on, but if you actually look this up, you can see there was reporters there who filmed this. You can see these are photos, and they said, look at this. Believers' explanations, skeptical explanations. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sun did not really dance in the sky. We know this because, of course, everyone on Earth is under the same sun. That's a good point. And if the closest lying star to us suddenly became doing celestial genetics, a few billion other people would have reported. Now, that's just one guy saying that. But there are people who were there, who said, I didn't see anything. Where am I going to find it? Supernatural. Where is it? Because I know like it's in here somewhere. There are people who were there who were like, I didn't see anything. The person next to me claims to see something. I didn't see shit. Now that's if you're getting multiple conflicting accounts, you kind of got to go, all right, something weird's going on for sure, but I'm not going to sit there and say this objectively happened. Let me see. Where can I find? So it says not only did all those present not see the phenomenon, but also there was a considerable inconsistencies among witnesses as to what they did see. Despite the presence of hundreds of reporters and photographers at the field, and one photo often presented as authentic is actually a solar eclipse in another part of the world taken sometimes before 17. Anyways, the witness Joachim was present, says we must declare that although we admit the possibility of some miraculous fact, we were there while having in mid-mind conversations we'd had earlier, cool-headed persons and anticipating changes. So, yeah, there's always different people saying different things about this effect. That's my point. All right, now go back to, let me just finish this off before I open up the floor. So I go, is this a fucking riddle? He says, are you fucking tarded? And so, are you fucking tarded? And then he blocked me. That was it. That was the end of it. He literally blocked me. I didn't even get to finish. I was legitimately trying to inquire on what he's talking about here and have a back and forth. He totally lost shit, blocked me for months. So this is in January. He just unblocked me a few weeks ago for this debate. And by the way, before he blocked me and he was messaging me because he had my number and we were going back and forth. And he was like, I have you saying this against Flint Dibble, like blackmailing type of shit. And I said, go ahead. I've said that publicly to Flint Dibble. It was because there was something I said about Flint Dibble to him privately where I was like, damn, Flint is really going hard about the whole Graham Hancock thing, man. I don't think it looks good how much he talks about it. I think he should. I'm like, he already won the debate, in my opinion. He should just let it go. And I said this to Dan, and Dan was like, screenshot, haha. I'm gonna let this go. I'm gonna let everyone see it. And I was like, go ahead, dude. I literally told Flint to his face that exact same thing. He's not gonna care. I literally and I screenshotted him my DMs to Flint saying the exact same thing to Flint Dibble's face. So like, go ahead, dude. You have nothing on me. And then he blocked me and never talked to me again. So now we're going to debate. The debate is going to be about the pyramids. When were they built? Why were they built? Who built them? Is there any my position is that I believe in the scholars, the Egyptologists, and the evidence. The evidence on the ground gives us a really clear picture of what happened. His position is just, no, scholars are wrong. He's not even giving a real position about, I think they were built in 10,000 BC, which I've heard him like allude to it or something before, or like Graham Hancock being right, or I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have a position. That's fine. If he doesn't have a position, he doesn't have to. But it is kind of like a weird debate because on one hand, I have a position, and on the other hand, he's just a wrecking ball. So it'll be interesting. I'm very interested to have it, and Matt Bale is going to be the moderator. It's going to be in person. So it's going to be intense, but hopefully Matt is going to keep things calm. I'm very ready for it, and I hope you guys are too. That's going to happen on the 15th. And I don't know if it's going to be live or if it's going to be recorded, but it's going to happen. So that's that. Now, I do want to open up the floor, and I got to have Bakken on first no matter what. So I'm gonna drop a link in the chat. And you guys can come out one at a time, 5 to 10 minutes each, maybe 10 at the most, like 5 minutes each. Well, I want to hear your theories. And while these theories are coming in, keep the super chats coming in. I want to hear everyone's theories about the Bible, about history. Don't keep everything PG. Let's not get me canceled. Let's not say any swear, let's not do anything crazy. And you understand what I'm saying? So Here we go. I'm going to give the chat. I'm going to give the link to the chat. And Bakken Pan is first.
Chat. So this guy blocked you in January because you insulted him, and now he wants to meet in person.
Yes.
Rolling on the floor, laughing emoji.
That is pretty funny, isn't it? Apparently, he called me out on what's his name's channel. So, Woden Haler, you'll be next after Bakken Pan. See, I'm gonna keep a mental note of the list. Bakken Pan, you got someone ahead of you, so you better hurry up. No, I'm just kidding. 2, Woden Haler, and then 3, Danny Kyle. So, is that you, Danny? Are you the? Oh, that's you, right? Okay, you are. Okay. All right, cool. What's going on, man?
Hey, guys. First things first, I love you, Neil. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for jumping on.
And what I want to kind of present today is what I call my adapted, documented hypothesis theory, which is essentially what I'm going to call the apostolic harmonization period. And what it does is it updates the documentary hypothesis theory, and it shows the development of the New Testament up into the Council of Nicaea era, and how that happens, how the New Testament comes to be, the groups that are involved and why it's important. And I think it's important just to kind of look at the first chronicler, I think of creator of the Torah tradition, which would be, I think, Simon the Just. And that name, the Just, is really important because it becomes a demarcator for anybody who wants to be a so-called, protector of the Torah later down. You get Jesus called the Just. This is the same words that the
Or James
righteous,
the
right?
Just. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. And at
Oh,
any point,
Dikaios. That's the word. And
yeah,
it's got that root for DK, which is also a goddess. So there's some cultural baggage there,
yeah. And so this happens right at the end of the Persian rule. Simon the Just is the first high priest to hold a position of power, to be able to consolidate these things. Now you still have the Temple of Elephantine, that just went down, I think, in 410. So that period right there, I think, is important. Under
Talking about this guy right here.
yeah, Simon the Just, right there.
Simeon the Just. Yeah.
Yeah, 250-ish BC, right?
Yeah, it
So
says Code Josephus was Simeon is Simon the First from 310, right around 300 BC, 200 BC, 270 BC.
yeah, and so he was in tradition. He was the one who was first quoted, saying the Torah, the temple, and loving your neighbor. So just this idea of like, it's not about animal sacrifice. If you can't make it to the temple, this is how you can still worship. This is when Judaism became a textual religion, and no longer was a religion
Codified
of,
Bible. Yeah.
yeah. So and this is so from this point forward, this is when the Torah begins to be added onto. I think the next significant period is the Maccabean Empire. I think that's when the chroniclers come in, First, Second Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Zechariah, and Haggai, all imperial literature, at least the original portions of them, to support the Maccabean Empire. And then I think the Deuteronomist reform is under John Hyrcanus, who goes through and wipes out the temple in Samaria, and essentially force converts the Edomites into becoming Jews. And this is where you have this centralized temple in the first place. And that's my updated Old Testament, in a sense. And obviously, more could be said on it, but this sets the stage, right? John Hyrcanus, he is the first high priest under the Maccabeans. He accepts his kingship and priestship, from the Seleucids, if I remember right. They send him a crown, they send him a robe. Boom. And to anybody who's following this Simon the Just, who at the time was between the Seleucids and Ptolemy, waging back and forth, creating this unique Torah tradition of identity. They would have seen this as a threat to that, in the sense of, like, they're establishing a line of priesthood that is not from Zadok, who they say that Simon the Just was part of. And that if you read in Zechariah, it talks about Zadok, and it talks about Zerubbabel being the branch, the king priest, right? The two branch, right? And so this is also important how it comes into first century, right? So fast forward, you have this, two groups of people: the Herodians, which are pro-Roman, and the pro-Roman capitulators. And then you have the not Roman the not Roman Israelites, as they like to claim their heritage of true Israelites. And it's not that they don't want people to come into Israelite, it's just they believe that a Zadok should be the one on the priesthood, right? So you have the Nazars, the Nazarenes, which Nazar is the same root word for branch, crown, right? And this group is opposed by Herodians. And you see that throughout time, whether it's the killing of Jude or James or Jesus, all these different groups, they are always doing things that are talking about the temple being, corrupted, trying to reform the civic life. There's a whole lot to go into it, and I can go into it another time. But long story short, this leads up to Paul, coming in, first gets converted. After he gets converted, goes back to his family. And what I think is important here is that if you look back in the creation of the Torah, and the reason why I think that's important is that you have the SP, which is the Samaritan Pentateuch, and you also have the MT, which I think keeps a lot of the old Hebrew tradition before the Septuagint. Not necessarily all of it, but they both talk about the special herb that you know what I'm talking about. And I think this herb, which was preserved by the Zadok priesthood, at least, throughout the time of Simon the Just, who had created this, this is when this priesthood was bought over in 175 by Jason, right? Jason buys the priesthood, right? I think at that point there was, that was the beginning of that Macedonian period and a separation, and that also included the recipe. Like they had this family called the ABT ABTINAS, and they had their own chamber in the Herodian thing, and they were the people who reproduced their own version of the smoke. So I think that there's definitely this weird thing going on, but the only reason why I bring it up is because I think Paul receives at the end of his initiation the sacred oil, and the sacred oil gives him a revelatory experience, and it's either that or he's crazy or he's a liar, just like straight up C.S. Lewis kind of this on this, right? And I think he's having this revelatory experience he's never had before, which can be achieved, if you've never experienced something like that. And now he's going out, and the Herodians were good friends with Philo. They were financially tied together. We could go into it, but
Yeah,
point
that's
is,
they're like it's like the same family pretty much. They're from the same dynasty, if you want to call it that. It's from the same ruling dynasty.
yeah. So Paul knows Philo's works. He knows Philo's views, and he's thinking he's seeing.
Now, he never
the
cites it
cosmic
directly,
Christ.
but I would be shocked if Paul went through his whole life without ever knowing Philo. It would be like beyond comprehension that if that was the case. But he's very similar in his way of thinking.
Yeah. And this cosmic Christ, like he says, he goes up to the third heaven, right? Like, so he's having this experience he doesn't know how to explain. He creates this message. There's tension between the original group of Jesus and Paul's new gospel, which is based on his revelation. Long story short, you get the two Jewish wars, and at the end of the second Jewish war, any leadership from the original Nazarene, Essene, Ebionite, whatever you want to call them, leadership has pretty much been wiped out. And there's now a power vacuum. And in this power vacuum, Pope Pius is set up as the first bishop above all other bishops. Before this, there's like a Sanhedrin of bishops. And so he's the first pope, the first real pope in the Pauline faction. And this is when you start getting literature like Acts, and you start getting all the other harmonizations that I think happen. Like you start getting like Clementine literature, like Second Clementine, which talks Second Clement and the recognitions. All this stuff is like to smooth over the church history that's recreated by Acts. Because they recreated Paul. So now so in this period, there's this harmonization. And you see this structure, this bishop structure solidified by the time you get to the Council of Nicaea. But shortly before that, under Pope Sylvester, the last bit of this Ebionite heritage went to Pope Sylvester and tried to reclaim their rightful claim, but they're wiped out. So and the whole point is just like, you can look at look at Papias. Papias, I think, is a made up character. or at least some
Really?
of the things put into his mouth are absolutely made up. He didn't know Hebrews. Hebrews wasn't even written. You know what I mean? He didn't know John. You know, John. It's like some of
Yeah,
the like
a lot of people have pointed out that even if he's not a made up character, some of the stuff that they attribute to him is very
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And he could be. You're right. He could be a character like Saint Dionysius, who was written
Yeah.
in the 5th century. But the thing is, Papias would be a lot harder to prove that because he is cited by this guy right here, Irenaeus, in 180.
Right,
So
and
we
that
have,
happens.
yeah.
Sorry, that
No,
happens after the harmonization period after Pope Pius. I think anything post 150 should look at, you know, when it comes to historical attestations, should question how real it is, or if they're trying to match it up with the Acts historical narrative.
Yeah, and like just for anyone wondering, there is a good reason to have that mindset because as I found out when I was talking to Nothath, like Christian scholars had a tendency to go back and fix manuscripts that didn't agree with their 5th, 6th, 7th century mindsets. They would literally go back and either destroy the original and rewrite it, or they would like interpolate little sections of it. And then so the manuscripts we all have now are all mostly 9th, 10th, 11th, and later. Like I'm not kidding. Like 99% of all the Christian manuscripts that exist of any writer, whether it's Paul or Polycarp, whoever, they're all from like 11th, like 10th, 11th century. The physical copies I'm talking about, and they're copies of copies of copies of copies of texts that go back to 180 or whatever. But there is room to play around with that stuff once you start getting farther in the future. So
Yeah.
you just
Well,
gotta have
hey,
a good
brother,
reason. You gotta have a good reason to doubt. If you think there's an interpolation, you have to have a good reason for it. But it's
Yeah.
definitely legit.
Yeah, truth should be forward facing. Like it should be logical, it should be rational, it should be able to be borne out by evidence and critique. You know, uh, that's what it should come down to. Like you shouldn't be mad if your theory or your position is wrong. You should be thankful you learned better.
I agree. Exactly. I've changed my mind on so many things throughout the years. You watch me from 5 years ago, you're going to see me saying things that I'm not saying now because I've dug into this stuff head first, willing to change my mind if I'm proven wrong. That's how you should be.
So, well, hey, brother, wife wants to go to bed, but like, let
All
me
right, man.
know if you ever want to talk about like expand this more and like get into different sections, lay out some questions, because I think ultimately it's just like, you know, we need a kind of a documentary hypothesis of the New Testament, you know, a kind of a way to think about how these texts are, you know, come together, because I don't think it's just always individual authors just making their own editions. I think
Yeah.
there's definitely tactic, you know, behind some of it at least.
Yeah. Like I agree. Well said. Thanks,
So,
man.
have a good night, brother. Love you.
You too. See you later. We got Woden Haler in the house. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going on?
I remember you from last time.
That's right. Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So this is not going to be, I wish I had some more controversial, but I was thinking about the different Christian denominations in Europe. And if you look at them, you can see the artifacts of the previous pagan traditions in them.
Mm.
So Catholicism, you've got this very hierarchical structure, focus on tradition, the idols, focus on ritual and maintenance of the establishment, Roman paganism. And then in the Germanic, you've got this whole like Protestant sort of sola scriptura thing. That's like the search for truth, the search for wisdom. You know, that's Woden going out and searching for the truth of destiny and the end of the world. So there's this like, and although we know less about the Slavic paganism, you know, if you look at Eastern Orthodoxy, it's this very sort of mystical traditionalist kind of vibe, independent hierarchy, but less severe than the Catholic stuff. But I don't know, there's this very, it's like, I don't know, the sort of Christian narrative sometimes is, oh, well, we did away with the old and we totally put in this new thing that was never there before. And it's like, no, that's not what happened. It's just, it's built on the architecture of what was there before. And you can see the genealogy there. It's very apparent in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And it's funny because everywhere you go, you can see their own, you can see how Christians in those places have their flavor of the old ways. like there's some sort of remnant, like in, for example, like the Germanic traditions with the way they do Christmas is very much like Yule. And in England, or I should say in Ireland, they have their big holiday is this All Saints Day, which would be around the time when they had Samhain.
So I don't know if the etymologists have like come to a conclusion on this, but one possibility that I saw, I don't think this is 100% yet, is that jolly, as in what we call Santa Claus, is etymologically derived from Yule.
Wow. That might
if that's true, that would be amazingly funny. But I don't know if that's 100% yet. It would. Well, so I think it is.
No, I'm looking at it right now. It says its ultimate origin is uncertain, likely deriving from Old Norse Yule, which is a midwinter feast, Yule. So yeah, that's the same word.
He's the
Yule Saint Nick.
Yeah,
he's literally the Yule Saint Nick. I didn't notice that.
Satan is Santa is Odin. It's fine. Like,
yeah, I mean he's very Odinic, Yeah, but that's another prime example. And then you see Saturnalia having its influence on all types of Latin Christianities, even Byzantine Christianity, I should say.
Stuff like the Maypole or Kupala Night. It's a Russian festival, East Slavic festival, but it's like, oh, this is for Ivan Kupala, Ivan the Baptist, John the Baptist. This is for him. But it's like, oh yeah, on the summer solstice we go and we jump over a bonfire, or in the spring equinox we go and we jump over a bonfire, and it's like, yes, I remember when John the Baptist told me to do this.
Yeah, and I was gonna pull up. I've read this on my channel a whole bunch of times, but I wanted to maybe pull up the letter from Bishop, or from Pope Gregory to the bishop, where he's like, let them keep their. I think I read it on with last time I did one of these actually. Hold on.
I think I was on when you read that, so
I just had to open my door. You're good.
I think I was on when you read that one time. Which was
were you really?
Yeah.
Because I think this is like a similar topic. Yeah, but it's just there's a chance there could be 100 people who are watching now that didn't watch that time. So maybe we should show it to them, because I think it's worth showing it to them. First, I just want to make sure this is the right Gregory to. Wait, what was it? It was the letter to Bishop
Miletus.
Miletus. Yeah, that's what it was. Hold on.
Epistola ad Miletum.
Bishop Miletus. I think this is it. But Gregory to Bishop. Here we go. Yeah, I found it. So this is going to be from the Catholic website. Obviously, it's decent translation, I guess. And oh wait, Bede. Bede is in. Well, Bede's in English, right?
He would be in Old English, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's still a translation. Yeah. He says Gregory to Miletus, abbot in France.
He might have written this in Latin, but
yeah. He says, since the departure of our congregation, which is with you, we have been in a state of great suspense from having heard nothing of the success of your journey. But when Almighty God shall have brought you to your most reverend brother, Bishop Augustine, tell him that I have been long considering myself about the case of the the English, right? To wit, I think this is one of the first times they actually mentioned the Angli, right? If I'm not mistaken.
It's probably, yeah.
Yeah. With the temples of idols, which is pagans, might as well just say pagan temples. But the pagan temples in that nation should not be destroyed, but that the idols themselves that are in them should be. So just get rid of the idol. That's it. Don't get rid of the. And it says, let blessed water, holy water, let holy water be prepared and sprinkled in the temples, and the altars constructed. And the relics, the crosses, the what else do they have? They have the foreskins, they have the whole all that stuff, all the relics. Bring them in there, throw them up on so everyone can see them. That's the new idol. Since if these same temples are well built, it is needful that they should be transferred from paganism to Christianity. I'm just making my own translation here. literally transfer the paganism to the Christianity.
Yep.
Right.
And the idolatry, like you bring up a good point, like this is the new idol. But when you look at the new idols, they're always so gruesome. Oh, this is a fragment of bone. This is his, a piece of the blood. I was having an argument with a friend of mine recently about Eucharistic miracles, the Catholic, like, the wafer turned into blood. It's like, and you look at some of the crucifixes, they're just very gory.
Imagine if they
rotting,
ran into
rotting flesh and like.
Imagine if a Christian ran into let's just say Hindu tradition where they had a foreskin up on a platform. They would go, "Oh my God, these barbarians!" Like that's literally what you're doing. Like you bring, like, oh look, we have the foreskin of Jesus. This was in churches in this time. So this is funny. But that when the people themselves see that these temples are not destroyed, they may put away error from their heart. So this is talking about manipulation here. And knowing and adoring the true God may have recourse with the more familiarity of the places they have been accustomed to. He literally just said, if they see that their holy sites are still being used by us and being adorned and being taken care of and updated and make sure that they're not, like they're treated well, they'll join us. It's trying to get them to, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy to me.
And then the next line, let them sacrifice cows to Jesus instead. It's fine. Just let them. This is the big one.
This is the big one. And since they are wont to kill oxen, sacrificed to demons, really it's just their gods, they should also have the solemnity of this kind in a changed form, so that on the day of dedication or on the anniversaries of the holy martyrs, by the way, this is literally explaining how Halloween became All Saints Day.
Yep.
The anniversaries of the holy martyrs, All Saints Day, which is on the same day as Samhain, which becomes Halloween. I mean, I don't know how much more evidence you need for that. Whose relics are deposited there. They may make for themselves tents of the branches of trees. And these temples that have been changed into churches and celebrate the solemnity of religious feasts. This is important. He's literally saying, let them keep their rituals. Let them keep their rites. Let them keep everything except make it Christian.
Yep.
That's it. Just make sure there's no more mentioning of their gods, no more dedicating to their gods. Let them do all the same stuff. Like nothing in here, he said, stop what they're doing. He's saying, let them keep their culture, just make it Christian. Make them worship the Jewish God. Nor let them any longer sacrifice animals to the devil, but slay animals to God. Like they're still sacrificing for their own eating. So this is obviously it's literally saying, go ahead, guys. And by the way, some people might think, what? Some Christians might hear this and go, what? There's still a lot of sacrifice. I thought we did away with sacrifice.
No.
That's not what Paul says. Paul in Corinthians.
It's like if they were actually that convinced that this was like a moral, righteous, crusade against these evil pre-existing traditions, you wouldn't be saying this. If the rhetoric always changes depending on what's convenient at the time.
Yeah, and so look at this.
It's either the pagan gods were fake or they were evil demons, depending on which is the most convenient.
Yes. Yep. He says, Paul in 1 Corinthians 8 on sacrificing to idols. Now, about food sacrificed to idols, we know we all possess Gnosis. But Gnosis puffs up while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know as they ought to know. Whoever loves God is known by God. By the way, this was like one of the central books to Marcion, so this is like very Gnostic. And he says, so then about eating food sacrificed to idols, we know that an idol is nothing at all in the world. It's nothing. It doesn't do anything to you. You don't even believe in them. And that there is no God but one. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or the chthonic gods, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for all we lived, and for Jesus, blah, blah, blah. So he says, not everyone has this Gnosis. Like this is a big Marcionite thing, right? Or even Basilidian, or like they all know, like we have this Gnosis. We have this, but Paul is saying, hold on a second. Not everyone has this Gnosis. Not everyone's saved yet. Some people are still so accustomed to idols that when they eat sacrificial food, they think of it as being sacrificed to a god. So they don't have the gnosis. They can't figure out this is not a big deal. So since their conscience is weak, it is defiled. But the food does not bring us near to God if we are no worse if we do not eat. So he says, be careful, however, that exercise of your rights does not become a stumbling block to the weak. So he's basically saying, dude, go to these pagan festivals and go and mingle with these people. Their food can't do anything to you. Don't you have gnosis? Don't you know this? It doesn't do anything. And then he says, but if you're with your other Christian friends and they can't handle it, just don't do it. So he gives them a little warning of like, don't do this if it's hurting Christians, but like, go ahead, go eat meat sacrificed to idols. It doesn't do anything. So the reason why I bring that up is because
it's very pragmatic.
It is very pragmatic, and this is why Christianity took over, because it was able to do this. So what Pope Gregory is doing is he's going straight.
You can really see the Platonic legacy. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like that whole last passage was like riddled with like that's
Plato.
This is these are the philosopher, ruling class. This is the noble lie. This
is it. These are the people above all the superstitious.
Yeah.
And they're ruling with superstition.
Yeah.
And he's the noble lie. And he's saying, but so Pope Gregory has been like, dude, let them fucking do all their weird pagan shit, man. Just make it Christian. Just figure it out. Like you got this, bro. You're smart. You can figure this out. You know how to manipulate people. So this is what happened. This is why we look at the world today. And I see these bloggers, these Christian MDiv scholars, and like these Tim O'Neill type of people who are like their whole career, their entire career online is to debunk pagan influence on Christianity. And they're like completely ignorant to how Christianity even spread throughout Europe by adopting all these, by literally melding, like forging itself onto the pagan world.
That Thracian horseman and Saint George.
Yeah.
The same imagery. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pull that up. That's a good one. The Thracian horsemen. If you even go to the Wikipedia page, and even they're like everyone's pretty much agrees with this. Whoops.
I was in Bulgaria once, in the region where the Thracians used to live, and in one of the museums they had this whole wall of Thracian horsemen reliefs, and then in 2 rooms later, icons to Saint George, and it's the exact same thing. It's like you can see the.
Yep. See, these are all Thracian horsemen, and then eventually, like, there's so many of these we found in archaeology, but then eventually, it's like you can see it's the same pose. You got the same spear, the same cape flying around. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same exact thing. It's the same image: cape, spear, cape, spear, cape, spear, and then you look at the Christian ones: cape, spear, cape, spear. It's the same thing. So yeah, just to finish off the quote, he says, and there's a super chat comment. He says, "Slay the animals to gods for their own eating, and return thanks to the giver of all, while some joys are reserved to them outwardly."
At Samurai Jack dropped $5 super chat. New philosophical download. Christos/Schrödinger. Paganism. The pagan gods are either demons or fake, depending on convenience.
Yeah.
The dude said.
Exactly. It depends on the situation. If they want them to be demons, they're demons. If they want them to not exist, they just not exist. They talk out of 2 sides of their mouths. So.
And you started off the stream by reading from Nietzsche, and I think he's, of course, as he always is, very insightful on this. His position on the influence of Christianity in European history is very, very interesting. One of the more sort of deeper positions that I don't fully understand yet, but I think it's insightful is, well, no, the highness of European culture was partly derived from having to contend with this philosophical strain too. So it was the war between the old and the new modes of thought, that the conflict and the dialogue that wound together and created this sort of beautiful flowering.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that.
Yeah, I agree. Before I go to the next, before I go to the next guy, I just want to finish this off, because this is just so, like, it's so in your face. It makes it so, it's such an amazing piece of evidence. For it is undoubtedly impossible Did I skip one? They may be able to more easily incline their minds to inward joy. So he's basically saying, make them, ease them into this thing. Don't just force it on them. This is like a literally a psyop. Literally.
Yeah, they tried the really destructive like iconoclasm thing, and that didn't work at the start. So
yeah, you're right. They know the playbook now. They figured out how to do this. Is that they have a system now. For it is undoubtedly impossible to cut away everything at once from hard hearts, since one who strives to ascend to the highest place must needs rise by step or paces, not by leaps. We need to ease them into this. So there's thus to the people of Israel and Egypt, the Lord did indeed make himself known, but still he reserved to them his own worship to the use of the sacrifices. So he's basically saying, and I hear Orthodox people talk about this all the time. Like, oh, why is God saying we should sacrifice bulls and stuff and not anymore? And it's like, oh, because they're easing the pagans in thousands of years. It takes them, centuries. It's silly. But he's making this argument right now. He's literally using that. Oh, the people of Israel used to make sacrifices in the desert, and then they eventually got Christ, which they were accustomed to offer to the devil, and joining them to immolate animals and sacrifice to himself, to the end that their hearts being changed, they should admit some things in the sacrifice and retain others, so that though the animals were the same as what they have been accustomed to offer, nevertheless, as they immolated them to God and not to idols, they should be no longer the same sacrifices. That this then it is necessary for your love to say to our aforesaid brother that he, being now in that country, may consider well how he should arrange all things, blah, 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 blah. You get it. So this is in the Calends. Okay. But yeah, that's a crazy piece of evidence, I think, for understanding how Christianity spread around. The Pauline playbook. That's what it is. It's Gregory looking back and going, well, Paul said, let's forget about the meat sacrifice to idols. Let's worry about the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pay no attention to the man behind the curtain situation.
Seriously. That's
no,
like,
it's it's like it's such an interesting part of history because like the Dark Ages, and obviously that was a negative consequence, but like you have to contend with all the things that are part of your story, and it's something I think about a lot. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I'm listening. I agree. And it's interesting to see how people are kind of understanding our history is very nuanced, riddled with nuances in that way. I don't know. I'm interested to see where people take it going forward.
Indeed. Anyways,
anything else?
No, not really. That's most of it. A lot of fun. Love the stream.
Thanks, man. I'm glad I like you jump on, man. It's always something good. So
absolutely, we'll attempt to do so more.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Peace out.
See you. And then we have Jonathan Beard.
Hey, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, man?
Not too much. Hey, so you take like the mythicist position nowadays, like the celestial Messiah, or right? Do you think there might have been a guy?
Yeah.
Let me ask you what you think about this. The Tacitus, where he mentions it actually says in the earlier manuscripts, Christianos, which actually means the good ones. Talks about the guy who was crucified by Pilate.
Yeah, he spells his name wrong.
Well, yeah, correct. Later on, they altered that to Christianos, to what they would say is the correct spelling. But do you think it's possible that they actually started with the Celestial Messiah, found those references to Tacitus, and then used that to like accommodate it and create like the literalist myth, like about Pilate?
I don't know, because that would change the whole chronology. Would have to change because Tacitus is like 120 AD,
right?
So you already have I don't know, depending on where you want. How there actually is now scholars dating Paul at the 2nd century, a few of them. If that's true, then maybe what you're saying could be possible. If that's You would have to slide Paul, and you'd have to slide Clement of Rome, who's 96 AD, backwards to be on. And then
What does Clement say?
Clement says a lot. Clement's constantly referencing things that, Christ being crucified and, his miracles and stuff like that. Clement, we could pull it up. Clement of Rome.
Okay. Yeah, because my theory was kind of maybe they originally started, like I said, with the celestial Messiah, and then when people didn't really necessarily believe that, like when they got challenged on it, maybe they found like some other kind of Jewish leader, like some early, militant kind of messianic figure, called Christus. Maybe they adopted that and then wrote the literalist like Gospels, where they actually give like biographical details about Jesus being crucified. That was kind of my theory.
That'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know what dominoes.
Yeah, I don't know the dating. I don't really know the dating of each of like the Gospels that actually give those biographical details, but it would be interesting to.
Yeah, because this one right here is from 96, dated to. He's one of the first bishops of Rome, a couple after Peter, and he would have been right in that 90s time. He mentions Jesus Christ. Let's see what else he says.
See if you can search for Pilate. See if he mentions Pilate at all.
Not in this letter.
Really interesting. And when was
your theory about Pilate? He didn't exist.
What's that?
What's your theory about Pilate, though?
Well, that maybe that's where they got those, like the literalist myth about him being crucified by Pilate were from the actual manuscripts of Tacitus, and then adapted that to the later Gospels.
Well, so you think Josephus was not real? Think that's a forgery?
I think definitely some of it's a forgery.
Okay.
That would
have to be true for what you're saying.
I was just going to say, isn't it like if you remove those passages from Josephus, like doesn't it still basically read like pretty much the same, like, or doesn't it like read sequentially even if you take those?
Sort of. You can make that argument, but it's in the section about Pilate. He's already talking about Pilate.
Okay.
And then he mentions Jesus very briefly, and then moves on. So you can remove the Jesus passage, and it still would just be talking about Pilate. There are some scholars who think this, so you wouldn't be like completely alone on this. There are, for example, who was it? Origen, I think. Origen is writing in the 180s. He's writing about Josephus, and has no knowledge of the passage about Jesus at all. He's literally talking about Josephus, and he just doesn't say anything about the passage. He even says something that counters it. He says something along the lines of, Origen passage about Josephus and Jesus. Let me see if I can get Gemini to tell me what it says. I forgot exactly.
When's the first time you actually? What's the first gospel that mentions Pilate?
Oh,
be like Matthew or?
Yeah, they all do. Pilate's in all the Gospels.
Oh, really? Even like Mark and Paul?
He's in Mark, yeah. And then it says right here, or in the 18th book of his Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus bears witness to John having been a Baptist, and as promising purification to those who underwent the rite. Now, this writer, although not believing in Jesus the Christ, in seeking after the cause of the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, says that these disasters happened to the Jews as a punishment for the death of James, the just, who was called the brother of Jesus. Now that's interesting, because why would you say that and then go, but Josephus also says that he was the Christ. That's what he says. And so Josephus literally says he was the Christ, which is fake. So almost every scholar agrees that part of the Josephus is fake. But what most scholars will say is they'll say Josephus mentioned Jesus briefly, but it's heavily edited. But there are some people, because of this Origen passage, they'll go, I think the whole thing's a forgery. I don't think Josephus even mentioned him at all. And I don't think that's a bad argument. I think it's fine. I don't know why people think that's a bad argument. I think it's a fine argument because it is
Well,
very
it would
weird.
solve it would solve the guy. Like we would have the actual guy that it would be based off of, definitely.
Yeah,
You know,
possibly.
in
But then
terms of
also,
having
it also
some kind of figure that they're drawing from to like craft like the more literalist myths after. But like, so that was just kind of my theory. I don't know.
you know what else is interesting? Philo of Alexandria, who's literally living in the same time as Jesus. He's living in the
Yeah.
30s, 20s. He lives all the way to
No,
like 50 AD. He mentions Pontius Pilate a few times, mentions him like twice. And he's talking about all the stuff he was doing. He's talking about all the trouble he was getting in. And then he never mentions Jesus.
Yeah.
You would think if this was a big deal, like everyone thinks it was.
Well, and also too, didn't the Romans document a lot of like people that they executed and things like that? Like, aren't there a lot of records about stuff
No.
like that, or and not quite?
Well, so Tacitus's Annals, there is quite a bit of mentions of people getting crucified, so like that. But it's not just like random people in Judea. It's like high level people who like got caught doing some sort of conspiracy or something. It's never just some random guy in the year 40 got killed. They don't do that. So
I see, but that's definitely something. I mean, a guy, rising from the dead and healing the sick. They definitely would have mentioned that, I would think.
That's one of the big arguments. Like Philo is literally a guy who talks about there being a son of God who will be called the Logos, who will inherit the kingdom of heaven, who will give a Eucharist. He doesn't say the word. He doesn't use the word. He says he'll give a chalice that'll be a cup of salvation, which is he's describing the Eucharist. He's like literally describing a proto-Christianity. And then in his letter to Gaius, he's mentioning Pilate and Herod and Agrippa and all the political. He even mentions the governor of Syria named Petronius. And he's like, he knows what's going on in that part of the world. You can see it. He's writing all about it. And it's just like, it's fascinating to me that if there really was a guy like Jesus doing these things, Philo would have been, and there, I just think it is a strong case to be made that Philo would have mentioned something about this, considering he mentions Pilate and Herod. You know what I mean? And Herod
definitely would have mentioned
Antipas too. He mentions Herod Antipas too. So he's mentioning all the different Herods and all the different Pilates and everybody. He's just mentioning everyone from that region. So it's like it's weird. So. And like I said, he's writing this 20 years later. He's writing this in the 40s, almost towards 50 AD. And the reason why we know that is because he's writing during the time when Agrippa is in charge, which was in the 40s. And Petronius was governor in the 40s. It couldn't be. And he's writing during the time when Caligula is reigning, 40s. Before Nero. So if Caligula's the emperor, we're talking 15 years have gone by since Jesus has been crucified, and the news hasn't even got to Philo yet. That's a long time.
If Philo is Jewish, right?
Yeah, he's Jewish. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sketchy.
It is. He's writing in Greek. He's writing, and it's really sketchy. I mean, I think it's one of the most. Because you can talk about arguments from silence and all that stuff, but this one to me is strong. This one is strong.
Okay, interesting. Well, I was just curious to see what you thought about that. I mean, it's obviously, dude, it's like impossible to know, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's impossible to know.
And for the manuscripts that we have, I think the earliest is like the 11th century or something from Tacitus.
Oh yeah, the copies of the copies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any but that's for everything though.
Correct. And there's definitely evidence that it was like erased and rewritten or whatever. But I mean, it could have just been a misspelling. And also, too, they say that was like a common pagan, like derogatory term, but it actually means something. It meant the good ones or something like that, I guess.
Yeah. There's actually a Chi Rho on a coin from like 200 BC. It means Creston, Crestos. It's for what's his name? Let me show you what I mean right now. Pretty sure it's in here. Let me find it real quick.
It is kind of weird that Clement didn't mention Pilate at all. That we can find.
Who? Clement?
Clement. Yeah. That is odd that he wouldn't.
That's just that one. Clement wrote a bunch of epistles. It might be another epistle that I'm not thinking of, but the one that I pulled up, he didn't have it. Look at this. This is a coin from 246 BCE, Ptolemy Eregetes, or it literally has a Chi-Rho, and it means Crestus, Creston, or and the accusative form.
That's an eagle. That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's like the symbol for Edom, right?
Well, not in this case. These are Greeks. That's more of Zeus. He's holding the thunderbolt. That's Zeus. That's the Zeus's eagle.
No kind of relation there.
No, this is Greek stuff. Ptolemies are not into that whole. They're not like worried about Edom or anything.
Yeah. Plus, actually, now that I think about it, if that coin was in like 200 or 300s BC, that was like right about the time that the Old Testament was forming in the first place. Correct?
Yeah. Ptolemy would have He would not be knowing about it. And by the way, the association with Edom and the eagle is actually very, very, very dubious. It's there's a small reference where Edom is mentioned in the same sentence as an eagle, and then the Talmud just made this whole entire thing about eagle and Edom. Rome is Edom. It's so nonsense. It's not there. So
it's just whatever they wanted to mean at the time, basically. Whatever
fits their whole thing,
Makes sense. Well, dude, by the way, great job the other night thrashing the Ammonites, man. That was you definitely redeemed yourself, because I'll be honest, like the only reason I ever really even trusted Ammon is because when I first watched your podcast with Danny Jones, you were like, oh yeah, he has the sources and stuff like that. So I just kind of assumed that it was correct. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming out and thrashing him, man, and fucking exposing it and showing everybody the actual sources. And I knew you weren't like doing that deliberately or anything. I'm not like being accusatory, but
yeah. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt when I met him for a long time. Like maybe he does have these sources and maybe he's just really slow at presenting them. And I kept asking him and like, hey man, when are you going to show us? Dude, when I first met him, he on my show. I wonder if I can find it actually, where Ammon Hillman, Gnostic informant. Let me see if I can find this. Where he literally told me a story about one of the saints, like Saint Cyprian or something, where he says, here it is right here, Medea. Let me share my screen. I could probably find it really fast.
Okay, yeah. Take your time, dude. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is how often he talks about Medea as if she was like a real person.
Oh, yeah.
That's and I really started to be like, okay, this guy's just like completely full of shit.
Yeah, like she could have been, but I don't know. It's not like this is like a super well-known thing.
Well, he says that he got the Theriac from Medea too, where like she was the first Christ and all that, and that is just not true. It was Andromachus or something like that is actually where they got the Theriac.
Yeah, here it is. I found it. Let me unmute this. Listen to what he says here. He completely just lies to me.
This is a kid who shouldn't be out. His name, Greek text says.
Here we go.
People are taking off. Yeah. And by the way, the Greek text says twice that boy is naked. It emphasizes the fact that he's naked.
Real quick on that point, the Greek text in Mark 14 doesn't say he's naked. It says, as he ran away, his sindone fell off. So he's wearing a sindone during the scene, and then it falls off as he runs away. So they ignore the context there. But that's I don't even care about that right now. What I want to show you
the other thing too, dude,
he's an Aeniscos, man.
Yeah.
This is a kid who shouldn't be out. This is a kid who shouldn't be out. I mean, you only read about this stuff.
A kid who shouldn't be out. And Aeniscos is a 21-year-old. It could be a 21-year-old. This is nonsense. Anyways, he's lied to me. He's just lied to me twice right there.
Like guys like Cyprian coming out of the cemetery with the viper venom drooling out of his butt.
Did you hear what he just said there? Guys like
viper venom drooling out of his butt, bro. This guy is fucking wild.
Let's hear it one more time.
Guys like Cyprian coming out of the cemetery with the viper venom drooling out of his butt, and the prostitutes running after him. This is crazy.
Watch what I say. Where's this?
Explain this. What myth is that you're talking about?
Oh, it's not a myth. It's Saint Cyprian. He was infamous for having, come back to the true path after having taken a detour with some prostitutes in a cemetery where they were using drugs that were drooling out his bum when they caught him. Yeah.
When was this?
What was this?
Yeah, when was this? Oh, don't get into the dates.
Don't get into the dates. Don't ask me for sources. Don't you dare ask me for sources.
Okay, I'm just trying to get an understanding.
So after that, after this stream, for the next year, 2 years, I kept, because I wanted to. I go, you mentioned this Saint Cyprian thing where there's venom coming out of his, and he never ever provided it, and it's slow. Our friendship started to slowly deteriorate. Because over time, I'm literally asking him to provide sources for all the things he's been saying on my channel. And I'm giving you the benefit of doubt as someone who had a PhD and someone who knows Greek. And I can tell he knows what some of this stuff. But he's using that to gaslight people. He's just making shit up out of thin air. And I don't know where it's coming from. I think it's coming from his own life, maybe, or something. He's his own bullshit in his head, his own pedo stuff that's going on in his head. That's my theory.
Yeah, or something fucked up happened to him when he was a kid or something like that. Well, the other thing with the Sindone, too, is apparently that was a pretty common garment for people to wear to sleep, like just the Sindone itself.
Yeah, it's like a shroud. For burial, maybe you're like sleeping, like a pajama. Yeah, but you're right. It's a shroud that you would wear for certain contexts. And it literally says, and his shroud fell off as he ran away. It doesn't say he was naked with only a bandage on. It doesn't say that. That's like he just lies about the Greek. He just lies about the Greek.
Yeah, it's sad, dude, because I mean, he just has like decades. And then after going back and watching the Carl Ruck interviews, where Carl Ruck is just looking at him like, dude, I don't want to call you out in front of everybody, bro, but you were fucking lying straight to there.
Worse than you think. Carl Ruck is on record now, which I'm going to provide. I'm going to promote it. I'm going to put it on my channel pretty soon. Carl Ruck is on record, like, going, no, he's wrong. And we asked him what Burning Purple was. He had no idea. He never even heard of it. Kyle Ruck, who Amin was constantly citing for Burning Purple, has no idea what it is. And I found out Kyle Ruck used to bring him around and get him like involved in these like joint scholarly books, and they would do presentations on them and stuff. But after a while, after a couple of times inviting Amin there, they realized not just Ruck, but like the other scholars, the one who wrote that book, I forgot his name. They realized this guy's not all there, and he's making shit up. It's not, his sources are not there, so they stopped inviting him. And I didn't know this. I didn't know that Ruck has been running away from Amin for years, trying to distance himself from him. I thought they were friends because Amin told me that they were so close. He's like, yeah, he showed me all these videos. Look at me and Ruck hanging out. So I actually listened to this. I used to have Ruck on my channel all the time. I don't know if you remember this. I've had Ruck on my channel like 3 or 4 times. And then the last time I had him on, I thought it'd be funny to bring Amin on to surprise him. Oh, look at your friend, your colleague. And it was not cool. Ruck was like pissed about that. Ruck hasn't came back on since. When he saw as soon as he saw that I was affiliated with Amin, he hasn't come back on my channel ever since. Even though you disowned him and stuff like that. And I asked him what he thinks about Amin, and his exact word, quote, he's not good at showing his work, quote, unquote. He's not good at showing his work.
Yeah, that is ultimately the crux of him, is that he no fucking sources to back it up.
Just makes it up out of thin air.
He just makes it up.
And then you see these possessed Ammonites. Like I had this girl Maddie on.
Yeah.
And I asked her, where can you give me one primary source where there's a prepubescent child being used for some sort of extraction ritual where they're making burning purple with venoms? And can you give me one source? And her reaction was so crazy. She was like, it's everywhere. Like, her reaction was, she was so confident that everyone knows this. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, can you show me one? She couldn't give me one. And I gave her homework. I said, here's your homework for the next 24 hours, however long it takes you. I don't care, a whole month. Send me an email of your sources that defend this, that back up this claim. I still haven't got a single source yet.
No, in fact, all she's done is shit talk you on Amin's stream.
which is good. I don't care. That's fine. That's good. It
I
just
mean,
shows that I'm
dude,
right.
I was in the chat that night, dude. He was
Greek.
begging her to get off of there, and he was in there calling you.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Dude, that shit was
That was so fucking satisfying. Because that's his whole thing was Kip, run, Kip. They're making fun of Kip for running. And then I have screenshots of him telling Maddie to run. And then I have B bringing his text on the screen and saying, here you go, Amin. Here's the link. You can join you and Maddie versus me at the same time. Why not? Why not? There you go. You and your priestess, you and your ambassador versus me, the guy who can't read Greek. Remember, I flunked out at Unit 3. You guys can both debunk me, right? And he ran away. And they gaslight, they cope and gaslight and go, he can't read Greek, he can't read primary sources, but I can, and they know it. They know it.
Exactly. And what's the guy from Cross Bible's name again?
Steven.
Yeah, Steven. I misjudged him big time, dude. I thought because he was a Christian, I was like, oh, he's got to be biased. Like, that's just got to be the issue. Nah, he actually just knows what the fuck he's doing.
He's legit. Yeah. He's legit. And the way his Christianity, I would say, is more of a cultural. Most Greeks are Christians, believe it or not. You go to Greece, they're mostly Christians. And a lot of them are like him. They're very legitimate. They're very facts orientated, and they're just culturally Christian. That's kind of how Stephen is. He's not sitting there trying to make Christianity true. He's a cultural. He's just following the Greek tradition, you know.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, dude. Perfect sense. That and the other thing I was going to mention was that whole Zebulon thing, that thing that Brandon keeps bringing up with you about George Washington. Dude, there are no sources to back that shit up, bro. Like, something about him writing it in a letter or whatever, but I looked deep into that. He never read that during the inauguration address. Like, he didn't read any kind of Bible verse. Like, and I could see it on your face.
Yeah, he was never into the Bible. Yeah.
You got super skeptical. I could see it on your face because George Washington was anti-Abrahamic.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a Freemason, but like he believed in the Grand Architect, but he definitely did not believe in the God of the Bible. I mean, most of the founding fathers didn't. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, he fucking despised Christianity.
Yeah, that aristocratic order of the 18th century, late 18th century, was very much in line with deistic or traditional classical philosophy thinking rather than Christian idealist. You know what I mean? They had a different. They were on another level. They were smart people.
They really were, and they all had multiple professions and just like were pioneers in their field.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them were getting a lot of like the mythicist stuff from Germans too. They were very into like Germanic traditions and like Thomas Jefferson at the University of Virginia. He actually wanted people to learn how to read like the original Germanic text so that people couldn't be fooled by like the Jesuits and stuff. Like he was super worried about the Jesuits infiltrating like the political system and shit like that. So yeah, it's pretty entertaining history, but.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, man, that's really all I had. I like I said, just really appreciate you. Like I said, clearing up the shit with the Ammonites, and yeah, like I said, I was just curious what you'd think about that theory. I don't know. It seems like maybe that could possibly be the guy, but seems like maybe it's a theory, but not quite enough to back it up. And although it does seem like you don't really see those literalist interpretations until later, but it's hard to know. I don't have enough background.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on. I'm gonna do one more after you, and thanks for jumping on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, brother.
All right, how you doing?
You too.
Bye. And we got Grand Pong. It'll be the last one I'm gonna do tonight, man. So what's going on?
Hey, I'm hitting cleanup here. Thanks, Neil.
Hitting cleanup, yeah. What's going on, man?
Oh, not too much. I was just curious on your feedback on my idea about how the Carthaginians are, they ended up forming the Maccabees and took over the Holy Land, and it feeds into Barnea and company with there weren't really any Jews before the Maccabee era.
I never heard that before. That'd be new to me because I know there's Judeans, there's Yehudim, like you have Yehudim that call themselves Jews in the what do you call it, the scrolls that we found in Elephantine, for example, and then the Jews are mentioned in inscriptions by the Assyrians too, the Judeans. They're just not.
They're not the Second Temple Judaism.
No,
Jews. And that's what I'm saying. Jews, as we would know it in the Roman times, or looking back,
ethnically Jewish, but they're not Jewish religious yet. They don't have that doctrine of the Torah yet.
Yeah, no, it's the idea, because that's what makes so much sense to me, because I've talked to you about this before with the idea that it's the Carthaginians and the Roman Jewish wars were simply a continuation of the Punic Wars. And that, because it never made sense to me why there was just this huge hatred between Rome and this small little backwater country, just outside of the desert. But it makes sense if they were still the remains of the Carthaginians.
So, if you think the Carthaginians went back to the east and went
what I think happened. I emailed you my presentation. I did a presentation with Miguel on Aeon Bytes about this. But the idea is that when you had Ptolemy writing down the Torah, that was before any of the Punic Wars had happened. And what they did is they created all of the Semitic peoples, and they made basically a synthetic, syncretic, Semitic, basically, religion. The same thing they were kind of doing with Serapis. The Ptolemies and Alexander were big into syncretism. So they were trying to bring together a syncretic Semitic religion. And they based it off of Plato and using Plato's ideas, which again, the intellectual record of Plato taught Aristotle, Aristotle taught Alexander and Ptolemy. This isn't even any sort of, how did they get the information? This was direct teaching. And, as the Punic Wars, the 3 Punic Wars happened, essentially a lot of the rich in Carthage fled back to Tyre and back to the Phoenician homeland. Yeah. And what happened is after the final one, you already have where Hannibal, after he left Carthage, he had more careers than just a general. He ended up being an
Lucids.
Yeah, he was an admiral, and again, his creation of the snake bomb is one of the great ones, where he won a naval battle by launching those pots of snakes onto the opposing ships. But Hannibal he's one of those great figures of history. Right about that time period, anybody with money would have seen everything happening, and they basically fled back there. And some of the ideas, they would have taken that already existing Ptolemaic, creation, and then used that as a basis for going into the Holy Land, and that's where they forcibly converted the people there. That's my basic general theory, and it seems like that went through all the way through Bar Kokhba, and it's almost like Orthodox Christianity took over after Bar Kokhba. It's almost like a direct segue into there, where you had the earlier separate threads of Christianity in the first century, but it seems like right there at the what about the 120s or so is when the big scholarship all of a sudden exploded, right about the end of the Bar Kokhba, and you could almost look at it as like a retooling of the battle there. And
that's interesting. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I can't say it's impossible.
Well, I was good. That's what I'm going through, is sort of high level, and it makes history make a lot more sense to me. And the specific ones that I just encountered recently that I'm curious on your feedback on is who Jacob had on recently, Bartosz Adamczewski. His idea is that Deuteronomy came first in the Samaria area, more or less, during the Persian era, and that the Genesis and Numbers were a later Hellenistic adaptation of the Persian era Deuteronomy, and it's like that makes a lot of sense to me. I'd never heard that idea. I didn't know if you had encountered that or what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, that makes total sense, because I don't think you can say, when you look at these texts, there's clearly some antique about this. There's something antique about the Torah. Like
Song of the Sea. So the Ugaritic. The
layers in there. You can see it. They run into them, and you can't just. It would be very strange to me that all of this was all just invented of ex nihilo in the 3rd century. So I think that it was formulated and edited at some point in that 3rd century period between 310 and 270, and then they translated into Greek. But I think there are layers that go back. By the way, the whole Elephantine thing, it's a strong argument. Obviously I talk about it all the time. So does Gmerkin. Gmerkin did. Because but the only problem with it is that it can't tell us anything about what the Jews were doing after 586 who went to Persia or Babylon. So that's where I think most of the stuff is being written after 586 in Babylon, and then they start to, and then when they go back in that late Persian period, then they start to write these texts, while Elephantine is over here in their own time capsule, not even knowing that there's the total new culture happening over here with like stories about Moses and Abraham. So it could be 500 BC. It could be 520 BC. It could be 480 BC. There's almost no way of knowing because it's in a different time capsule now. But before 586 BCE or during, I think there's almost nothing at that point because, like I said, when these people go to Elephantine, they give us that time capsule, and there's nothing in that time capsule about Moses or Abraham or anything. To me, that's like a smoking gun that all this stuff has to be after. If not, maybe some of it before. That's just very scant. Maybe there's a legend of Abraham that does go back to 700 or something, but it's got to be so scant and so unknown that for some reason all these Elephantine Judeans have no idea. So that's where I'm at.
I see what you're saying. I've almost inverted my approach to it, where I'm sort of looking at it as those are various different Semitic groups prior to what we know of the Jews and the Hasmoneans, because right now I very much question that there ever was a first temple that got destroyed. I don't see anything in the historical record that shows Nebuchadnezzar went back a second time to Jerusalem and sacked it. There was a first trip that's well recorded, but there's no record in any of that I've seen in the history that shows the second trip back. And this hits with my idea, with the idea that Adam Zuski had about that Deuteronomy was a Persian era one, where that points to me as the key character that we need to figure out who he was, and the significance is Zerubbabel.
Yeah,
because he's in both of the lineages of Jesus for some reason. He's like the only one that's in both lists, and he's very much held up in such high esteem at the time, but he's almost not mentioned in the Bible at all.
Yeah. So as far as the whole so what happened is that in 596, Jehoiakim surrendered.
Right.
That was in 596, and then let's see. He dies in 598 in custody, and then in 587 there's another text called the Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle that says it captured Jerusalem. Oh no, that's the one from 597 in the 7th year. Jeremiah, blah 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 blah. What you're saying is since there's no text talking about the 586 destruction, you're wondering if that was sort of fabricated later.
Yeah, that basically the whole idea of David, Solomon, the United Kingdom, and that whole history is a lot of historical fiction that's kind of more mythology and blending together, because one of the coding, because they seem to have coded history in there. And one of the codings that I'm playing with at the moment is the northern and southern kingdoms also correspond to Assyria and Babylon, because the competition between those two seems similar to what's related in the Bible and the way that they were sacked, where the northern kingdom fell first with the aid of the southern kingdom, which is exactly what happened with Assyria and Babylon. And then later, the southern kingdom fell, which is what happened with Babylon to Persia. And it seems like a kind of a historical echo / inversion.
Yeah, well, that's what I would say to that. So the northern kingdom is in like 619 BC.
Yeah.
That one we have a whole scroll for. Then we have another one that talks about 597, a surrender from Jerusalem, but the Jerusalem doesn't actually get destroyed yet. It's like 10 more years after that.
Right, and we don't have there's no historical record for that one.
Yeah, there's no source for that one, but as I'm looking at, there's like a whole bunch of archaeology that people point to, saying it looks like there was a fire destruction of the walls and something like that, something. So there's archaeological data to support it. But you're saying it's funny that let me just try to stem in what you're saying. You're saying we have a source for the northern kingdom. We even have a source for Jerusalem surrendering. But why isn't there a source mentioning the destruction of the temple in 586? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying that leaves it as an open question as to whether the event actually happened. Because you could, how you can date a fire within a 10-year time span there, because how do they know that the fires that they're seeing as the destruction weren't part of the first time around in 597?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. I see there's a El Yahudu tablet. It dates to 572, 15 years after the destruction. And let's see what it says. I'm just looking at this. I'm literally just going into this blind. It says, it says there's a man named Yashuv Tzaddik, apparently hoping to return to the Holy Land. Points to his parents' desire that he immigrates to Israel. So there's just like some sort of text about people. But again, it doesn't actually mention what you're talking about. So yeah, I don't know.
No, I was going to say, it seems pretty clear that Yahwism, not Yahwehism, but Yahwism developed in Babylon during that time period, that the seeds of it were set there. And it seems very, and that in early Persia, and it seems very much like, it's almost a answer to Zoroastrianism. And again, the parallels between that one, it's like the, you worship the moon god Sin instead of Ahura Mazda, and you end up with Yahwism. And again, it plays into the possibility that Yah, the Egyptian moon god, Yah, is actually, would be the Yah worshipped in Yahwism tag.
Yeah, maybe. I think, this is all interesting stuff, man. It's all interesting stuff. Yah and Yahoo are variously, there's some sort of Yahwism going on for sure. Yeah. But I mean, look, that's a strong point you made there about without the lack of actual writing that talks about the 586 event. It's an interesting point.
And then with some of the characters, it's like Sargon the Great. You can see where he was kind of pieced into parts with some of the different biblical characters. The putting him in the basket of reeds. Well, there's Moses, him being the cup bearer and taking over the kingdom. Well, there's David,
And where else would they learn all this mythology other than in Babylon, where they're being taken for 70 years,
Well, and I'm saying it's not even just a recorded myth, it's an intentional where they cut the historical figures up and then distribute it and created fictional biblical characters out of it. Sort of like if you ever read Winds of War, where you have historical figures running around, then you have Herman's Wokes, his fictional characters working around, interacting with them, and history turns out the way it always does.
Interesting. Yeah, man. Nice to have you on again for
Absolutely. Always good, Neil.
Anything else you wanted to say?
No, that pretty much sums it up. Just keep it up. And I was going to say on the whole almond thing, you know my position on that is I was kind of neutral towards him at the beginning, and nothing has turned out differently to sway me one way or the other. He has his brilliant points, and he puts the car into the lake too often.
Yeah, man, that's interesting. Perfectly well said. Thanks for coming on.
Yep, you're welcome, Neil. Take care. Bye.
All right, you too. See you. Well, it's been an interesting night. Yeah. So listen, I got 2 debates coming up. First one will be on me talking about the Jewish God, which is Yahweh, being the God that both Christians and Muslims all worship, whether they like it or not. Whether Muslims want to say Christians are worshiping a demon, or whether Christians want to say Allah is the devil himself, they're all wrong. Because I'm making an anthropological argument. It's an argument about objective reality, not a theological bullshit argument. So, and then after that, stay tuned for me debating the pyramids and all that stuff, the pyramidiots, those type of people. And so if you follow my Twitter, you'll see I'm pretty engaged with some of these people who like to make arguments based on, for example, let me just show you before I go. Stuff like this. Let's see if I can share my screen. Yeah.
All right. It's still on that one. It's like, yeah, so that's calcium copper silicate, which is known as Egyptian blue.
Yes.
Which is another piece of evidence for ancient industrial scale chemical manufacturing.
Ancient industrial scale chemical manufacturing. These people are delusional. These are people with no expertise at all. Zero. Not even a single. They don't know anything. And they do these tours. They live in Egypt. I think this guy lives in Egypt. I think they do these tours, and they take people around and they just bullshit them and make a career off of it. They make a whole living off just being lying grifters.
So they had to make hundreds of thousands of gallons of just the paint. Egyptian blue is found across ancient sites all over Egypt and also all around the Mediterranean.
And it's like, whoa, Egyptian blue does exist. So maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy was on Danny Jones telling Danny Jones that the entire pyramids were filled up with chemicals to produce ammonia. Like, this is like, and like, no, the tombs that are in there, the actual coffin, that doesn't mean anything. That's just fake. That's just all about bullshit. All the texts, all the primary sources from Egypt, that's all bullshit. I don't know how to read anything. I probably can't even read hieroglyphs, but I'm just going to declare it's all bullshit. I'm debating this type of thing that's going on the internet, this type of grift, this type of nonsensical delusion. These people are literally delusional. And I actually wrote this. People are full of shit. I legitimately wonder if they are completely delusional, like total Dunning-Kruger delusion going on in their heads. And they believe that what they're saying is right, or they're just raking in money off grifting stupid people and don't care at all. Which is worse. Seriously, which is worse at this point? I don't even know. It's really hard to tell. So that's what I'll be going up against, that type of thinking. I'm not saying Dan believes in the whole chemical thing, but he's sort of defending that side. He's defending the whole alternative archaeology nonsense. So that's it. That's it for tonight. I'm going to do another one very soon. I'm going to check my Patreon messages. Actually, right now, I'll check that. So you have just attained true. Let me get it to shine. There we go. True Gnosis.
You have just attained true Gnosis.
What is Jesus doing?
The demiurge has no power over you.